Hello. All right. So the quick rundown for the stream. What do we have planned? We have Fortnite, obviously, as you can see, with some more of the news videos that we've been wanting to catch up on. A lot has piled up. A lot has I've fallen way behind on. But I definitely like to catch up on those, even if it does seem old and outdated, which is kind of a crazy thing to say, just because it's really not that long ago. Just situations just keep getting more and more insane. So yeah, we'll be watching that, playing some Fortnite. Do excuse me if I'm a bit slow and not playing my best. It's not like I was particularly insanely good before, but you know, not feeling super great today. I'm in a bit of pain and quite tired. I have to wake up tomorrow quite early, so this might be a pretty short stream. But let's see what we can get done for today. So let's start off with a video from the Majority Report. I do think this is a video we tried to watch before, but either way, closed captions are on, videos on the highest quality available, and it's at 1.5 speed, as the rest of the videos are gonna be. Hopefully, we'll see. Anyway, let's get started.
We are back, and we are joined by my friend, comedian, host of the Situation Room podcast,
Yes.
Francesca Fiorentini. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, what's going on? Good to be back.
Yeah.
Probably my last time before we get plunged into differing worlds of same pain or worse pain.
Hard to disaggregate that. You said you were listening a little to the interview. What are your thoughts? Like, how are you feeling right now about the race?
I was feeling bad, and now I feel less bad, which again, given the political system we have, will take less bad and
I
feeling
believe
less
this was
bad. But
before the
yeah, I think
elections.
my thing is I really actually get 2016 vibes from the centrist pivot that Kamala's doing, and in a way that terrifies me because I do feel like what finally beat Donald Trump was obviously a global pandemic, but the Biden campaign truly incorporating the Bernie movement into its fold to varying degrees of success, and we can parse that later, but you know what I'm saying? There was a
Yeah.
real overture. And despite Biden and everything he said, and whatever Democrats say, we know that the BLM movement was, in fact, a massive reason that he won in
Yep.
2020. You look at the polling, you look at the numbers, it's like, oh no, this is what it was, because you had, Gestapo on the streets and you had extrajudicial killings happening, and young people were like, okay, like, don't want this anymore. So that is why I am nervous, but I am willing to concede that maybe this is more like 2012. Maybe I shouldn't be so worried. Maybe the centrist pivot will all be fine for whomever she's trying to get in
It was not fine.
Pennsylvania.
It did
That
not
is
work out.
definitely not me here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's extremely interesting because there's been analyses of how the electorate has changed. Like the Obama coalition has fractured completely, and I think in many ways, as you're saying, the Biden campaign well, at least the Biden administration actually cared what Warren and Bernie had to say. I mean, a big reason why we have Lena Khan, in my view, is because Warren worked the inside game to get her in there, and Bernie, that's a huge reason why they've been so pro-union, I think. Like, Bernie really was somebody that I think, Bernie Sanders and Biden are friends. Like, they talk,
Right.
I think that's part of why Bernie held out so long in terms of, like, when Biden was dropping out, he felt like he could make some inroads with Biden in ways he couldn't with Obama. But, yeah, I think the coalition's just different. And I think that based on the numbers that they're seeing when they're trying to just hyper-target these high-propensity voters, going for older white people, that's really what they're doing. And I haven't seen metrics that would contradict that would say that that's bad strategy, frankly. I'm worried about Michigan. Obviously. And
Clearly, it was a
the
bad
fact that she hasn't
strategy.
differentiated
As you can see, I'm
herself
not
on
going to be
Biden,
pausing the
Gaza.
videos.
Like, what's your
My hands are a
feeling
bit
about
busy.
that as of right now? I mean, it's just crazy to see still to this day. She just isn't even taking the suggestions that I think are really strong from Pelosi, of all people. I mentioned this with Dave. just criticize Netanyahu. That's all you got to do. I mean, we're not asking for the world here. That would be a good signal.
Yeah, and not only that, you know, it's like we're all reading the news. I think there's this weird presumption that, like, also very active voters, people who are definitely gonna vote or are involved in the political system, emissaries of, you know, would-be emissaries of her message, are not seeing that Blinken lied about whether or not Israel was blocking humanitarian aid and got intel from USAID and was like, cool, I'm gonna lie in front of Congress on this. And continued sending weapons to Israel. We know that Biden privately basically was like, gee, I don't think Netanyahu wants me, man. And it's like, no, he doesn't. So it's like, we see what's happening. You know, we're reading, and yet there is no change in, again, her stance. And here's what I have to say more broadly, which is, I think for those people who don't think that the anti-war movement is growing within the Democratic Party, I very much disagree with you.
100%.
And people like Roan, Georgia state representative, who maybe was going to speak at the DNC, she disagrees with you. She sees just in Georgia the movement around this issue in ways she has never seen in her lifetime. And I concur. All my years in the anti-war movement,
how
in the
wrong
Palestine
you are.
justice movement,
Or you
never
were.
seen this kind of energy. So
No,
let's not nix
Democrats are
ourselves out
very
of the
comfortable with
equation
war,
here.
clearly.
We can
100%.
still fight for this. And yet, it freaking sucks that being pro-genocide is not disqualifying as a candidate. That is impossible to swallow and to admit.
It's exactly right, and it's also what informs my, you know, maybe an optimism's the wrong word because it's impossible to have any rose-colored glasses about our government funding one of the worst crimes in the history of humanity as we speak.
Yeah.
But that's what gives me optimism about potentially a shift in policy if we have her in, because the coalition is growing. And this isn't about, I don't care what's in her heart. I just don't care. But I do care about...
She doesn't know what's in her heart. I'm sorry.
She's a cipher. Sam talks about Biden as a cipher for the Democratic Party. I think she's a cipher. Like, Biden has real ideology about Israel. Real ideology. I don't think she shares that. I think she'll go where the party goes, and that is something where, as you say, with this coalition growing. I mean,
And
you
the
know,
party's going
I don't want to
towards
throw my mom under
genocide,
the bus,
so
but my mom's
what are
just
you
like a
expecting
standard
here?
Democrat. She doesn't, you know.
Oh, same.
She-
Same. When
right?
there's like two blues against one another, she does like a glitch and is like, ah,
I know.
like-
and she was not in agreement with a lot of my rhetoric about Palestine, right? But she said to me the other day, you know, my opinion on the war has changed. Like, you know, this is really wrong. And it had been changed before. Again, not trying to throw her under the bus, but like, I look at her and I go, this is like a normie Democrat, right? 100%. We'll always
For
vote
sure.
Democrat. That means this is breaking through. And people are sick of this shit. And so, for Harris's own self-interest, she has to at least shift slightly, because this is not gonna, if she doesn't, I don't know what the future holds for the Democrats, because she'll get wiped out and she would deserve it.
She'll get wiped out. I mean, I said this before.
She does
it's
deserve
like,
it.
If in 4 years she doesn't, I'll say this here, if she doesn't change on this issue and no Democrat primaries her in earnest over it, I'm done. Like, I'm out. Then I'm like, really like, okay, where are we going here?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I think third party, especially in 4 years, probably unlikely to be, you know, viable. But yeah, it's just, it's untenable, and that's good. We're moving in a really good direction. But it's also just like, yeah, we see the reports of doctors in the States saying, yeah, when I was in Gaza, I saw sniper attacks on children. I took bullets out of children's brains. I mean, and they died.
Horrific.
And you're like, we're
right?
all seeing this. Can't you just acknowledge the news? Even call it a tragedy if you don't want to put it on Israel's hands. Just acknowledge what we're all seeing.
Let's
though it
play
absolutely
10
is
here,
on Israel.
Bradley, just because this is very much what you
Without question.
what you were alluding to. Two doctors went on CNN and they push back here on the way that Kate Bolden is framing this question. The New York Times just had, of all places, but in the opinion section, I think, but a long write-up that you're referring to of doctors explaining what they saw.
Yeah.
This is breaking through, and I thought this was really effective. This is Doctors Thair Ahmed and Tanya Haj Hassan. Dr. Ahmed has been on the Majority Report before. Here he is basically taking the CNN anchor to task on their framing.
Is coming under attack. And you mentioned actually at the beginning about these evacuation orders. These evacuation orders are for 3 hospitals in the north. Kamal Adwan Hospital, Indonesian Hospital, and Al Auda Hospital. Why are hospitals still coming under evacuation orders? Why are we still hearing about hospitals coming under attack and healthcare workers being killed? I want to just mention Dr. Khalid Dassur, a colleague of mine who I worked with at Nasser Hospital, brilliant young surgeon. When the Israeli military surrounded the hospital, he refused to leave his patients. He stood next to his patients and tried to keep them alive as water, electricity, and supplies were cut off. He was subsequently abducted, and for 6 months he languished in Israeli dungeons until he was released 2 days ago. Do you know what Dr. Khalid Dassur did? He went right back to Nasser Hospital and started working with patients again. I mean, if it wasn't for these Palestinian healthcare workers, we'd be in a much more grim situation. And the final thing I'll say is, 700 kids in Gaza, 700 infants, never saw their first birthday in Gaza over the last year. 200 of them born and killed in conflict, 200 of them born and killed in this assault. I mean, the situation is so dire. We need a ceasefire. We need it right now.
And Dr. Haj Hassan, speaking of the evacuation,
we need accountability.
Evacuation orders in the north and now in the south. We've seen today, one resident of northern Gaza who was just this weekend had to flee once again told the Associated Press this, and I think it was jarring, telling, and striking. Said this: since October 7 to the present day, this is the 12th time that I and my children, 8 individuals, have been homeless and thrown into the streets and do not know where to go. Where do you think it does? What do you think is going to happen with this humanitarian crisis, with the additional factor of Gaza is about to enter the winter, which often brings heavy rain to the region?
This humanitarian crisis, completely unknown how it happened or what's going on.
A humanitarian crisis is what you deal with when you have a hurricane, what you deal with when you have an earthquake. You have an insult and a humanitarian response. This is my career. This is what I do for a living. Every single person who does this for a living will tell you the same thing. This is different. This is not a humanitarian crisis. Kate, and I'm going to say it very clearly for your viewers to hear, this is genocide. When 70% of the population that are killed are women and children, when the population is starved of food, of water, of medicine, when you have attacks, repeated attacks on all the hospitals, the clinics, the aid distribution sites, the humanitarian aid agencies that try to help. More UN workers have been killed in Gaza than in UN's history. When you have over 900 families that have been exterminated, that have been taken off of the civil registry, killed. When you have over 17,000 children that have lost one or both parents. When you have bakeries, aid distribution sites, churches, mosques, schools, and in the last 3 days, in the last 24 hours, in fact, a hospital today that was bombed, as you just reported, the hospital where I personally was working, and I can tell you, they are working every second of every day to try and sustain life when Israel's strategy and evidence on the ground suggests that they're doing the exact opposite. They were targeted today. There was a rehabilitation center that was targeted in the last 24 hours, and there was an orphanage that was targeted earlier this week. These are the types of places that are being targeted. And so it's really hard to hear it over and over and over again, framed in the way that it's being framed in the media, which frankly, Kate, is very misleading. It is very misleading. 365 days of this. Death tolls that are so far outdated. We have no idea how many people are killed, but I am genuinely afraid about what we're going to find out when the dust settles. History books will be written on this, and countries will have to reckon, media agencies will have to reckon with their major role in the genocide of an entire population and in the destruction of humanitarian law.
Wow. So I had just read this write-up. I hadn't seen the clip yet. Damn,
she got
did she...
red.
She Well, so, you know, first of all, maybe I'm giving too much credit to Kate Bolden. Like, you know, this is from the top down with CNN. The fact that she had them on at all is an improvement. But that's exactly right. Like, they talk about... I'm watching, you know, I'll turn on CNN because of the hurricane just to get an update. It's the exact same language that they use. But for Hamas's attack on October 7th, brutal, vicious, targeted, systematic rape. All this kind of active language. But God, what could we do? I mean, when she says that death toll, people should look up GazaHealthcareLetters.org. There's a template on the website where you can email the White House. The doctors, 99 healthcare workers, you know, doctors, nurses who have been working in Gaza, like those heroes that we just saw on CNN. It is likely that the death toll from this conflict is already greater than 118,908, an astonishing 5.4% of Gaza's population. Yeah. That is the minimum, and we're still using 40K. But you know why? This has been Israel's strategy the entire time. Is because when they attack the civil infrastructure and hospitals, you can't count anymore. And they wanted to get to that point where there was no... They've killed all the record keepers, and they've destroyed all the ways to keep records. Yes. And so now they're taking advantage of this time period to kill as many people under the cloak of darkness. It's also why they kicked out all of the journalists and have targeted journalists for and have killed well over 100 media workers within Gaza because they don't want people knowing until it's too late.
Yeah, I mean, it's unforgivable, right? Like, I think this is Biden's legacy, and it will be Kamala Harris's legacy if she wins the election and doesn't change on this.
Yep.
It is, I mean, when she says news agencies and politicians and history books, you know, will make you reckon with what you've done. It's like, yeah, it's been a year of, this is not 6 months. This is not 2 months of now we're, you know, this is the fog of war deliberately being used to commit more war crimes. And Netanyahu said that, and now it's, you know, extending to Lebanon. Triple strikes. We're going to strike civilians. We're going to strike the ambulance workers. We're going to strike the people who went after the ambulance workers. We're going to, I mean, it's just like on and on and on. They keep going. And so, again, we need an anti-war caucus movement inside and outside of Washington to make sure that this stops and that we truly change. That also, that Zionist becomes a dirty word. Let's be real.
100%.
I mean, it already is with young people. I mean, you saw with the Speedy Mormon interview, this is one of my favorite Biden interviews, opening with the question, are you a Zionist? There's a reason they did that. Because Complex's audience, young people, people of color, don't have a good view of it because of what we've seen.
Right. If Kamala Harris comes out and says I'm a Zionist, then I'm going to be more like, okay, like this is insanity. I mean, she at least didn't show up to Netanyahu's speech, but Biden going out there and talking about how he's a Zionist, it proves the point that this is not about Judaism. I mean, it's just he is a Christian Zionist, but he's been in Washington since the 70s. He's been just baked in Israeli lobby propaganda, and we know that Biden eulogized Strom Thurmond and has racist tendencies, so it makes total sense with his history as a politician. I mean, that's why Obama selected Biden, in part, because he smoothed over things with the racists that were squishy about voting for a black man, and that's very much in keeping with how he's operated as it relates to Palestine. And so, yeah, exactly. This is, unfortunately, because Biden did a lot of good things domestically. The infrastructure bill was no joke. I love the fact that he's been the most pro-union
so
president.
outdated.
That's a real thing, but this is his true legacy as midwifing one of the worst crimes in the history of humanity, this genocide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kamala would have been no different. Trump ended up winning anyway,
he was finally
and he is
able to
significantly
free one
worse.
hostage, and that is himself.
Somehow.
So, but yeah, it's look. Not every politician was like rocked like a baby on a blanket by Golda Meir and told everything the light touches is yours. And Biden was, and so yeah, Kamala yes, it's more of a potential to push, and my God, do we need to?
My God, do we need to? And if you would like to push and write a letter to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, that letter template I just mentioned, Gaza healthcare letters. You can see that email the White House. There's also a Canada letter and a UK letter for folks
While you were right to do
in
it,
either of those countries, where you can email your
unfortunately,
leaders.
these
But this is a
inhumane
template, and you
monsters
could download the
did not
PDF
care.
here, and we'll put a link to that in the description wherever people are listening to or watching this. Gaza healthcare letters.org. I had meant to do that earlier.
Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you, Sam.
All right, guys, I have quite a story for you here. And
Kyle Krasinski.
there are so many problems with this CNN article, I don't even know where to begin. So I'll just say it up front, I think this is the single worst piece of propaganda I've ever seen in my life. And that's saying a lot, because I've seen a lot of horrible propaganda in my time doing this job for over a day. So here's what the title is. Quote, he got out of Gaza, but Gaza did not get out of him. Israeli soldiers returning from war struggle with trauma and suicide. Okay, here we go. A 40-year-old father of four, Eliran Mizrahi, deployed to Gaza after the deadly Hamas-led attack on Israel on October 7th. The Israeli military reservist returned a different person, traumatized by what he had witnessed in the war against Hamas in the Strip. His family told CNN 6 months after he was first sent to fight, he was struggling with PTSD back at home. Before he was due to redeploy, he took his own life. Quote, he got out of Gaza, but Gaza did not get out of him, and he died after it because of the post-trauma. His mother, Jenny Mizrahi, said. The Israeli military has said it is providing care for thousands of soldiers who are suffering from PTSD or mental illnesses caused by trauma during the war. It is unclear how many have taken their own lives, as the IDF has not provided an official figure. They continue here. 1 year on, Israel's war in Gaza has killed more than 42,000 people. That's such a conservative number, according to the health ministry in the Strip, with the United Nations reporting that most of the dead are women and children. The war launched after Hamas killed 1,200 people and took more than, I believe that number is actually a little lower. They're using the outdated figure for October 7th. And as it now expands to Lebanon, some soldiers say they dread being drafted into yet another conflict. Quote, a lot of us are very scared of getting drafted again to a war in Lebanon. An IDF medic who served 4 months in Gaza told CNN, speaking on the condition of anonymity due to the sensitivity of the matter, a lot of us don't trust the government right now. Israeli authorities, with rare exceptions, have closed off Gaza to foreign journalists unless under IDF escort, making it difficult to capture the full extent of Palestinian suffering or the experiences of soldiers there. Israeli soldiers who fought in the enclave told CNN they witnessed horrors the outside world can never truly comprehend. Their accounts offer a rare glimpse into the brutality of what critics have called Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's forever war and the intangible toll it takes on soldiers who participate. For many soldiers, the war in Gaza is a fight for Israel's survival and must be won by any means. But the battle is also taking a mental toll that, due to stigma, is largely hidden from view. Interviews with Israeli soldiers, a medic, and the family of Mizrahi, the reservist who took his own life, provide a window into the psychological burden the war is casting on Israeli society. Okay, we're going to continue here. We're going to continue here, but look at the framing. There is more concern
how horrible
for the
it
feelings
is.
of IDF soldiers who are engaging in mass murder than there is concern for the tens of thousands of innocent men, women, and children who've been killed in Gaza. Wow. And look, you got to call a spade a spade. This is par for the course when it comes to U.S. media. Our allies get all of the benefits of full humanization. Our enemies get none of the benefits, and in fact, they have the opposite. It's full dehumanization. And you can see that with the kind of language that's used, right? If it's an Israeli civilian who was killed, it's brutal, it's barbaric, it's savage. It's every negative word in the dictionary. But if it's a Palestinian civilian that's killed, they use passive language. Palestinians passed away in a blast that occurred. And it's like, what are we doing here? We're seeping the sentence of all agency and all accurate descriptors, because again, the goal here is, and by the way, I think it's subconscious. I don't think they're like doing this on purpose, thinking and knowing they're doing it, but you're not hired for a mainstream media position unless you have internalized the framework of empire. And the framework is, our allies good, our enemies bad. So let's write a long article detailing the mental health struggles of the soldiers who've killed over 50,000 Palestinians in Gaza. They say this, the mental health toll. Mizrahi deployed to Gaza on October 8th last year and was tasked with driving a D9 bulldozer. A D9 bulldozer. A 62-ton armored vehicle that can withstand bullets and explosives. He was a civilian for most of his life, working as a manager at an Israeli construction company. After witnessing the massacre committed by Hamas, he felt the need to fight. The reservist spent 186 days in the enclave until he sustained injuries to his knee, followed by hearing damage in February when a rocket-propelled grenade struck his vehicle, his family said. He was pulled out of Gaza for treatment, and in April was diagnosed with PTSD, receiving weekly talk therapy. His treatment did not help. Quote, they didn't know how to treat them. The soldiers, Jenny, who lives in the Israeli Ma'ali Adumim settlement in the occupied West Bank, said, yeah, tell me the framing from the illegal settler. I'd really appreciate that. Quote, the soldiers, said the war was so different. They saw things that were never seen in Israel. When Mizrahi was on leave, he suffered from bouts of anger, sweating, insomnia, and social withdrawal, his family said. He told his family that only those who were in Gaza with him could understand what he was going through. Quote, he always said, no one will understand what I saw. His sister, Shir, told CNN. Jenny wondered if her son killed someone and couldn't handle it. So this guy who survived, who made it out, and was saying, man, I saw horrible things. They're concerned about what he saw and what he's feeling. Here's a question for you. I wonder how the people on the side that are getting genocided feel. I wonder what they're feeling. I wonder what a child in Gaza is feeling. I wonder what somebody who lost 20 members of their family are feeling. I wonder what a kid who underwent amputation with no anesthesia, I wonder what they're feeling. I wonder what it feels like to leave one area, go to a humanitarian zone, get bombed at the humanitarian zone, and then go to another humanitarian zone and get bombed there. I wonder what they're feeling. I wonder their mental anguish. So if these people are struggling, how do you think Palestinians are feeling? Oh my God. Oh my God. All right. Let's keep going. He saw a lot of people die. Maybe he even killed someone.
But we don't teach our children to do things like this, she said. So when he did this, something like this, maybe it was a shock for him. Guy Zakin, Mizrahi's friend and co-driver of the bulldozer, provided further insight into their experience in Gaza. We saw very, very, very difficult things, Zakin told CNN. Things that are difficult to accept. The former soldier has spoken publicly about the psychological trauma endured by Israeli troops in Gaza. In a testimony to the Knesset, Israel's parliament, in June, Zakin said that on many occasions, soldiers had to run over terrorists, dead and alive, in the hundreds. Quote, everything squirts out, he added. Now do you see why I call this the single worst piece of propaganda of all time?
Oh,
they're trying to get you to feel bad
my God.
for these people and worry about their feelings. When there is an admission in this piece that they are running over, quote, hundreds. Now they say, oh, they're terrorists. But as we all know, it's 90% innocent civilians who are being killed in Gaza. So in other words, they ran over hundreds of civilians. They ran over civilians with a fucking bulldozer, and they want you to care about their feelings. As opposed to the feelings of, I don't know, the people who were run over who are now dead. Well, obviously you can't care about their feelings. They're gone. What about their family members? What about the other Palestinian civilians who witnessed this with their own two eyes? Who saw a genocidal hysteria and mania? The likes of which is unparalleled except for Nazi Germany? Oh my God. Zakin says he can no longer eat meat, as it reminds him of the gruesome scenes he witnessed from his bulldozer in Gaza. Hey, here's an idea. You could have not bulldozed over hundreds of innocent civilians in Gaza. You could have quit. You could have accepted the punishment if they say you're getting locked up for deserting the military. Okay, accept the punishment. You could have not done this. Instead, you sat there in your fucking bulldozer and you kept running over people, and now you want us to care about your feelings. He says he can't eat meat. The implication here is like, yeah, those Palestinians we ran over, it was a bunch of meat on the ground. Again, look at this. Look at this. How did this get through a whole room of people? How did the editor allow this? How did they think this was a good idea? What are you doing? Can you imagine?
Because they don't see them as humans.
In 1941, in Germany, describing the mental trauma taken on by Nazi soldiers.
Had to go through. Yeah, imagine.
That's what we're reading. And if anybody's going to say, oh, well, hold on, Kyle, you know, the Nazis purposely killed civilians and the IDF is not purposely killing civilians, I got a fucking bridge to sell you if you think that's true.
Absolutely is.
They 100% know they're killing innocent civilians. They are okay with it. They are fine with it because they view them as all guilty enough. They're all guilty enough. They're all close enough to Hamas. Who cares that there's 30 or 40,000 Hamas members and 2.3 million people in Gaza? They're all guilty enough. That's why, by the way, they cut off all food, fuel, water, and electricity into Gaza, knowing they were doing collective punishment of 2.3 million people. They knew that, but they did it anyway. Why? Because again, to them, they're all Hamas. They're all guilty. Quote, when you see a lot of meat outside and blood, both ours and theirs, then it really affects you when you eat, he told CNN, referring to bodies as meat. Do I even need to respond to this? Like, do I even need to spell out for you how depraved and despicable and repulsive this is? Is that necessary? I think anybody with a functioning brain can read this and go, ooh, wow, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? We're humanizing the people who are committing the mass murder and not talking to or understanding the people who are currently being subject to a genocide and ethnic cleansing. He maintained that the vast majority of those he encountered were, quote, terrorists. Oh, I'm sure, fella. Quote, the civilians we saw, we stopped and brought them water to drink. Who believes this? And let them eat from our food. Who the fuck believes this? He recalled, adding that even in such situations, Hamas fighters would shoot at them. Oh my God. Oh my God. CNN is just writing this. They're writing this as if like, yeah, it's plausible, maybe. Oh my God. Quote, so there's no such thing as citizens, he said, referring to the ability of Hamas fighters to blend with civilians. Quote, this is terrorism. So in other words, totally contradicts everything he just said. Can't help himself. Lets the cat out of the bag. Bro, when we saw civilians, we tried to help them. But also, by the way, there are no such thing as civilians, so everybody we killed was a terrorist. CNN needs to fucking apologize and retract this article and take a long look in the mirror as to what the fuck they think their job is. This is grotesque propaganda. This is like I'm reading fucking Der Stormer or whatever Nazi publication there is. When soldiers do encounter civilians, however, many face a moral dilemma. According to the IDF medic who spoke to CNN anonymously, there was a very strong collective attitude of distrust among Israeli soldiers toward the Palestinians in Gaza. Oh, you don't say. Is that why they killed 90% civilians? Is that why they did a total siege of Gaza? Is that why they're not allowing in food and letting people starve? Is that why there's totally unsanitary conditions and there's outbreaks of diseases like polio? There was a notion that Gazans, including civilians, quote, are bad, that they support Hamas, that they help Hamas, that they were hiding ammunition, the medic said. In the field, however, some of these attitudes changed. When you actually see Gazan civilians in front of your eyes, they said, oh, I'm sure, oh, yes. Oh, yes. You guys were doing this mass murder spree, and you went, you know what? I actually disagree with this mass murder spree, which is why I'm not going to pull out of the military and tell all and suffer the consequences. I'm just going to keep doing the mass murder spree and then whine about my feelings afterwards. The IDF has said that it does all it can to minimize civilian casualties in Gaza. I can't. Including by sending text messages, making phone calls, and dropping evacuation leaflets to warn civilians ahead of attack. So again, this is CNN doing genocide apologia. That's what this is. Because everybody knows that all of this is PR bullshit. Everybody knows that. But CNN credulously is, oh, yeah, the IDF says they're the most moral army in the world. That's what they are, yes. Forget that they bombed over 30 hospitals and countless schools and UN buildings and power plants and civilian aid workers and go on and on and on and on and on. Jesus Christ. Despite this, civilians in Gaza have been repeatedly killed in large numbers, including when sheltering in areas the military itself has designated as safe zones. The mental health toll in Gaza is likely to be enormous. Write an article about that. Relief groups in the UN have repeatedly highlighted the catastrophic mental health consequences of the war on civilians in Gaza, many of whom had already been scarred by a 17-year blockade and several wars with Israel. In an August report, the UN said the experiences of Gazans defy traditional biomedical definitions of PTSD, given that there is no post in Gaza's context. In other words, it's not post-traumatic stress disorder, it is current traumatic stress disorder. Think about what that does to a person. After Mizrahi took his own life, videos and photos surfaced on social media of the reservists bulldozing homes and buildings in Gaza and posing in front of vandalized structures. Some of the images, which were purportedly posted on his now removed social media accounts, appeared in a documentary that he was interviewed for on Israel's Channel 13. His sister, Shir, said she saw a lot of comments on social media accusing Mizrahi of being a murderer, cursing at him and replying with unpleasant emojis. Oh, Oh, does that hurt your feelings? Quote, it was hard, she said, adding that she tried her best to overlook it. I know he had a good heart. Yes, he took a bulldozer and rolled over hundreds of meat people who were laying there, but he meant well, bro. He meant well. Like, he would say happy birthday to me and stuff on my birthday. You know what I'm saying? Like, all sins forgiven, bro. I can't do this. I can't do this. This is like a hideously grotesque propaganda. It's like if in, you know, a hardcore right-wing Russian publication, they write about the mental health struggles of the Russians on the front line who are attacking Ukrainian civilians.
It would be exactly
right?
like that, yes.
That's what it's like, oh, your feelings hurt. You guys should have never done this shit in the first place. You guys should be on trial.
Wonder
for
how
war
much
crimes. But
sympathy
certainly
they
at the very
would
least,
get.
spare me your bitching and your moaning and pop a Lexapro and shut the fuck up, right? That's at the very least. But no, here we are. I'm not gonna go on because this is already like holy shit, but oh man. More humanity is awarded to the mass murdering Israeli soldiers than is awarded to Palestinian babies and toddlers and innocent men and women. Think about that. Think about that. I've seen very rarely, once in a blue moon, you get a specific story about a specific person who was killed in Gaza, right? I remember there was one YouTuber who was killed. We discussed that. There was a 19-year-old the other day who was killed. I believe it was in Lebanon. We talked about that. Mehdi Hassan brought that up in his debate with the IDF goon right to his face. But understand, there are literally over 50,000 people like that with specific stories and dreams and hopes and families, and they have a job or they go to school or whatever, right? Over 50,000. How many of those articles have we gotten in CNN? We get an article about the feelings of mass murderers before we get an article about the victims or the family members of the victims. That says it all. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. So you want to.
Thank you, Kyle.
Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people has been facilitated from day one by the Western media. They legitimised Israel's genocidal onslaught. They raised the incessantly stated in public genocidal intent of Israeli leaders and officials, whitewashed Israeli atrocities, on endless occasions refused to even cover atrocities committed by the Israeli state, dehumanised Palestinians, failed to accurately represent the full horror of what's been unleashed by the Israeli state against Gaza and beyond, failed to interrogate the complicity of Western governments. We really could go on. This latest horror underlines this outright racism and complicity in genocide and should have no hesitation in saying any of these things. In the early hours of this morning, the Israeli state attacked a hospital in Deir el-Balah in the centre of Gaza. Here, many displaced Palestinians were sheltering in tents. The result: multiple Palestinian civilians burned to death. The footage I have watched is as nightmarish as it is possible to get, and will stay with me forever. It shows Palestinian civilians connected to intravenous drips in hospital beds, burning to death. You see one lying. One of them is clearly a child, an injured child who was sleeping in their bed, connected to an IV drip, at what was supposed to be a place of safety, a hospital. And then an Israeli missile explodes, and they're burned to death. You can see Palestinians who are unable to reach them, screaming, overwhelmed with unimaginable mental agony. A little thought experiment. If a Hamas or Hezbollah rocket hit an Israeli hospital and there's footage of Israeli children attached to IV drips being burned alive, what sort of media coverage do you think that would get? Be realistic, be honest. I think you know the answer. There was another atrocity, endless atrocities committed every single day by the Israeli state. In this case, a school full of displaced sleeping Palestinians in Nuseirat, central Gaza, hit by an Israeli attack, with multiple women and children being amongst the at least 32 killed. But that hospital strike, for example, did not lead the news. Let me just start with Sky News. Look at their website, their headline. Israel names teenage soldiers killed in Hezbollah drone strike as, and then inverted quotes, 23 died, that's in inverted quotes, in Gaza school strike. Here you have the anti-Palestinian racism of the British media in all its absurdity and moral depravity captured in a single headline. After a Hezbollah missile hit an Israeli military base, you get 4 19-year-old Israeli soldiers who were killed, who were humanised by Sky News, an emphasis on characteristics to engender senses of sympathy, of grief. Teenage soldiers. The perpetrator, that is the force responsible for killing them, was named. By contrast, 23 Palestinian civilians are killed, many of them actual children. Their deaths put in scare quotes as if to sow doubt. Who they were not described, the perpetrator is not named. Now let's see this clip from Sky News this morning.
And the 4 soldiers that have died have now been named. All of them were just 19 years old. They are Sergeant Omri Tamari, in addition to that, Sergeant Yosef Kiev, Sergeant Yoav Admon, and Sergeant Alon Amite. As I said, all 4 of them just 19 years old.
Incredible stuff. Sky News dedicates airtime to these 4 Israeli soldiers with a profoundly mournful tone. They were just 19 years old, we were told twice. Do you remember Sky News doing this for any of the tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians? That is non-combatants who've been slaughtered. Was there this attempt to humanise actual children who aren't engaged in armed conflict? Would Sky News do such a roll call for another army engaged in rampant war crimes? I mean, they wouldn't do this for Hamas fighters, would they? I mean, even just saying that would provoke shock and outrage for some. But I'm not asking Sky News to do that. I'm aware of the war crimes committed by Hamas. So do explain to me what rules are being applied here. It gets worse, so much worse. Sky News employ so-called military analysts. Let's listen to this example from earlier this year.
This happened at the border checkpoint. You can see a car going through and ramming some of the police that were actually manning that checkpoint. The video we're going to freeze shortly, but the two people, a man and a woman in the car, subsequently they were killed by the police, but it looks like accidentally a stray bullet found its way into the van ahead, and that killed a 3 or 4 year old young lady. So tragic events in the West Bank.
So we have 4 19-year-old Israeli soldiers who were mournfully described as teenagers as just 19 years old. But in this case, we have a military analyst paid for on Sky News, uncorrected, describing a 3-year-old Palestinian little girl
as a young
being killed
lady
by the Israeli army as a young lady. And then he describes her death as follows, but it looks like accidentally a stray bullet found its way into the van ahead, and that killed a 3 or 4 year old young lady. In the course of this last year, there has been many attempts, unhinged attempts, to turn the English language on its head, and well, here's a striking example. We could go on. The top of the Sky News live page today was 4 teenage IDF soldiers killed as Hezbollah attacks. They did another tweet. It reads, breaking, the UK has announced sanctions against several Iranian senior military figures and organisations following Iran's multiple rocket attack on Israel on the 1st of October. You then see a scene of total destruction, silhouettes of people in front of the remnants of the building consumed with flames. What was that? It was the attack on the hospital by Israel, a Palestinian hospital. So they describe this attack on Israel by Iran, and then you see the image as though that's Iran's attack on Israel, when it's Israel's attack on Gaza. Sky News coverage continued to behave like this throughout the day.
A Hezbollah drone was able to evade air defences and strike a military base. At least 60 others were injured in the attack in Binyamina. Today, those killed have been named. They were Sergeant Omri Tamari, Sergeant Yosef Haib, Sergeant Yoav Agmon, and Sergeant Elon Amte. All 19 years old were killed in the drone attack.
There isn't even the pretense here that Palestinian life has any meaningful value. The life of a Palestinian civilian is treated as having far less value than an Israeli soldier. That includes Palestinian children being bombed and burned alive in a hospital while attached to IV drips. I would also note that last week the United Nations released a detailed report which declared Israel had deliberately destroyed Gaza's healthcare system as part of a policy of extermination. If we had a functioning media, the latest attack on the hospital would be reported by broadcasters and military outlets in that context. Clearly, it's not just media complicity we need to talk about. Today, David Lammy, British Foreign Secretary, announced, despite repeated warnings, the dangerous actions of Iran and its proxies are driving further escalation in the Middle East. Following its ballistic missile attack on Israel, we are holding Iran to account and exposing those who facilitated these acts. He then quote tweets a post by the Foreign Office, or as part of his post, he quote tweets a post by the Foreign Office, which in big yellow underlined capital states sanction, then also in big bold letters, senior Iranian military figures and organisations. Now, I am on team don't bomb people, and I oppose all military escalations. What matters in what I say here is the different standards applied and the action that Britain is prepared to take when it so wishes. It is a fact that the Iranian ballistic missile attack was aimed at Israeli military targets. No serious analyst doubts that. It is a fact that that attack did not kill a single Israeli civilian. But in this case, Britain imposes sweeping sanctions on Iranian officials and organisations. On the other hand, Israel has wiped Gaza from the face of the earth and perpetrated hideous war crimes from the West Bank and now indeed Lebanon. It has slaughtered tens of thousands of innocent people, many of them children, including just last night and this morning in a hospital and a school. It has even killed British civilians, notably in the attack on the World Central Kitchen earlier this year. 3 Brits killed. But there are no sweeping sanctions imposed on Israel. Britain has simply suspended 8% of its weapons to Israel and has frankly bent over backwards apologising for doing so, making clear it was essentially forced to against its will by legal advice, while continuing, for example, to provide crucial components for F-35 jets, raining death and destruction on innocent civilians. We know Britain could impose sweeping sanctions against Israel for its grievous atrocities in the way it has against Iran. It chooses not to. That is complicity in genocide. Right now, and I'll be doing more work, much more work on that this week, the Israeli state is executing a plan to destroy northern Gaza, with all food and essentials of life blocked from entry in a total siege. Nothing has entered since October began. We demand that civilians leave, but those remain treated as military targets to be targeted and killed. That is a grotesque war crime in full public view, and I would note the vast majority of this exhausted, starving population are not going to move. Having endured so many forced displacements already, with no safe passage there. Civilians trying to flee the south have been repeatedly murdered. Clearly it's part of a plan to ethnically cleanse the population and annex Gaza. Well, every day I feel burning rage about this. I'm painfully aware that I'm a white guy from Stockport. The rage felt by so many of us. I may be clear about this. We'll have brutal consequences felt for decades. This is the sowing, and my word, a bitter harvest will be reaped. I'm not saying that can be relished yet. Death and destruction. There are lots of prominent people who clearly relish that. I'm not one of them. I don't want any innocent people to be killed. It is those who have facilitated, in full public view, some of the worst crimes of our age, who have made that inevitable over and over again. And as someone who's worked in the Western media for 13 years, there are no words in the English language that adequately convey what I think about that industry. It is an industry which made this genocide possible. Without media complicity, this genocide wouldn't be possible. And the Western media has to be held to account for their role in one of the worst crimes of our age, because otherwise these horrors will never, ever end. Please like and subscribe, leave your thoughts and your comments. Help us take on the pro-genocide media at patreon.com/OwenJones84. Listen to the podcast. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, Owen. Please rest your voice. It does not sound like you're super well.
Okay, so lot going on, lot that's very disturbing. We're going to get to that with regard to the latest Israeli strike on Gaza. But wanted to start with this.
Just to be clear, all videos are going to be linked in the description, so you can check those out, and credit to everyone who's actually worked on them and featured in them.
put this up on the screen. Latest numbers are that 67 people were wounded. These were all soldiers wounded Sunday after a drone struck an IDF base in Israel. This was a Hezbollah drone strike. You also had a number of people, 4 who I believe were killed. So you've had a significant number of casualties here. And part of what is so significant here is that this drone was able to get through their, extensive anti-missile defense systems. So Iron Dome failed, and they're looking into why that happened and how this was able to get through. Apparently, there was another drone that attempted to get through as well. They were able to intercept that one, but this one was successful. The Army, they say, is investigating why no sirens were sounded and why interception attempts failed, as well as the drone's route. In addition, earlier in that same day, 28 IDF soldiers were wounded by anti-tank fire in 2 separate incidents in Lebanon. We can put up on the screen this image of the cross-border attacks because I just don't want people to get a false impression here. So obviously Hezbollah has been firing back, but it's still a very one-sided conflict overall. It's very, very unbalanced toward the Israeli side. You have 12,000 roughly combined cross-border attacks. 9,891 of those were Israeli attacks on Lebanon. You've had 2,163, which were Hezbollah and others attacks on Israel. Total combined deaths, 1,562. Of those, almost all of them were Lebanese people, 1,529. Just 33 Israelis killed in these cross-border attacks. Nevertheless, are obviously incredibly significant in terms of Israeli sense of security. They've been sold by their leadership class that the way for them to be safe and to be able to return to northern Israel towns that have been evacuated since October 7th is through war, is through bullets and guns and missiles and drones and bombs. And they also, I think really thought they had degraded Hezbollah to the point that it was probably just going to kind of fall apart. Assassinated Nasrallah, you had that massive pager and walkie-talkie attack, and Hezbollah showing here that they still have a lot of fighting power and still have an ability to strike within Israel. Important, though, I really want to emphasize the fact that, Hezbollah here striking a legitimate military target. And I think a lot of people should ponder the fact that the military that we're backing, which we're about to talk about in a minute, the IDF, the one that we're shipping the bombs for, just attacked a hospital with a tent city of refugees filled with patients, and children and women. And the ones that we call terrorists are attacking legitimate military targets and going after soldiers.
Well, what I think it highlights is more the lack of security and the ability for them to actually penetrate IDF defenses. And it just is the same thing where, look, yes, you can wipe out Nasrallah and all that, but everything kept saying here. Hezbollah is a much more capable force. Also, I want everybody to understand how much that this is the preview of what warfare looks like in the 21st century. This drone hitting a cafeteria, has been going on in Ukraine now for 3 straight years. And that's exactly how they've been able to kill a ton of Ukrainians, to kill a ton of Russians. There are so many horrible drone videos out there of them just following people. So the point is that this type of warfare is exactly the way that they're trying to get around traditional weapon systems, rockets, missiles, and all that, penetrate it very, very small, and still be able to really, cause significant amounts of damage. This is one of a very deadly incident inside of Israel for the IDF. Another one is, let's underscore the U.S. commitment to this. Not nearly enough people are understanding the gravity of what has now been announced by the Biden administration. Let's put this up there on the screen. The U.S. is going to deploy 100 troops to operate an advanced anti-missile system in Israel amidst high tensions. What we are talking about is the THAAD missile defense system, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. I was actually pretty familiar with that. I covered a lot of it with respect to South Korea. It is one of our most advanced anti-missile defense technologies, and it is one of those that is, you can see it actually in front of you on the mobile truck. It makes it very easy to deploy and all that. But the point is that if you think about this system and why it's so important, is it is physically incapable to run it without American soldiers on the ground. It's one of the reasons why the Ukrainians have been begging America for a THAAD system basically since the beginning of the war. And we're like, no, we're not going to do it because we have to put our own guys on the ground. But now think about this. Not only would we have our guys operating an anti-missile defense system, but what do you think the number one target of a drone or any of these other places is going to be? Is that. And so that means we're putting our people in an extremely high-risk situation, and nobody in the U.S. political establishment is saying a damn word about it. Joe Biden promised there would be no troops, that boots on the ground, for the defense of Israel. Well, already that was a lie with the whole Gaza pier situation. It was a lie previously whenever 3 of our guys were killed in that Jordanian, Syria insane raid, or in the drone attack, which still nobody's ever answered any questions about. But this is the most direct intervention by the United States. It also just increases. It also shows you. The Israelis brag about Arrow 3 and Arrow 2 and all of that. Yeah. Well, but when it comes down to it, and there's some worries with Iran, what are they doing? And they're like, hey, we need THAAD. What does that tell you? It shows you that their missile defense technology, which we pay for and build, is still not all that operable, and they need some of the highest level of U.S. defense to keep them where they're at. But worse, I think, is that it gives them the ability. They can do whatever they want now. You can go and hit a nuclear site if you want to. Now you've got Big Daddy America and 100 U.S. soldiers who are defending you. Yeah. And this is basically an insurance policy for the coming massive strike on Iran. That will happen. And that's why I'm scared, because now our people are the ones who are in danger.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And you're so right to point out, too, that, listen, our boots are already on the ground because we have 40,000 people in the region, and it's a regional war. And if you think it's not, just look at all of the countries that are being bombed right now. Like, you're deluding yourself if you don't think that those soldiers are already at risk. But with regard to this move specifically, we're getting these reports that Biden talked to Bibi and he doesn't want him to strike Iranian oil infrastructure. He doesn't want him to strike Iranian nuclear sites. But then you're giving him all the protection in the world so that he can operate with impunity and not bear any of the costs. So, again, obviously, Bibi is going to do exactly what he wants because you are not using any leverage. In fact, you're doing the opposite of that. You are enabling this behavior because they will not bear any of the cost. Instead, we're putting our soldiers' lives at risk and putting this, expensive system into the region. It's just from a policy perspective, it's utterly, utterly insane. But that's where we are, and the total lack of any discussion, debate, controversy around this is astonishing. It's utterly astonishing what we stand on the precipice of and how little care, concern, discussion, debate there is in the United States Congress, or certainly on the cable news airwaves. At the same time, we wanted to make sure and bring you this. The Israelis struck UN peacekeepers, these Irish peacekeepers who, this UN peacekeeping force has been in southern Lebanon for quite a long time. And the Israelis told them, you need to leave. And they said, no, we're going to hold our post. Like, we have an important mission. You don't get to tell us when we're going to leave, so we're going to stay. So Benjamin Netanyahu, you can put this up on the screen. It was in Hebrew, so I'll just read some of the translation here. He demanded that these forces be evacuated removed from South Lebanon immediately. He says that they're going to be used as human shields by Hezbollah. He said specifically, I appeal to the UN Secretary General, your refusal to evacuate UN IFIL soldiers has turned them into hostages of Hezbollah. So we all know when the Israelis break out that human shield language, that means you're a target. That means we are not going to care whether you live or die. In fact, if anything, we're happy for you to die. It wasn't long before we got this. Irish troops, quote, accounted for after reported Lebanon strike. UN sources told Reuters that Israeli troops opened fire at 3 positions held by UN peacekeepers in southern Lebanon on Thursday. This United Nations interim force in Lebanon has been there since 1978. It's meant to monitor hostilities, helps to ensure humanitarian access to civilians. And they put out a long thread on Twitter on Thursday morning saying that 2 peacekeepers were injured after an IDF tank fired its weapon towards an observation tower at their headquarters, directly hitting it and causing them to fall. It said their injuries are not serious, but they do remain in the hospital. They also fired IDF soldiers on a UN position in another town, hitting the entrance to the bunker where peacekeepers were sheltering and damaging vehicles and a communication system. An IDF drone was observed flying inside the UN position up to the bunker. And in addition, peacekeepers at that position reported the firing of several rounds which emitted smoke. Despite putting on protective masks, 15 of those peacekeepers suffered effects, including skin irritation and gastrointestinal reactions after the smoke entered the camp. The peacekeepers are receiving treatment. So IDF is firing on and gassing, apparently, UN peacekeepers now. And, the silence from the United States of America and the rest of the supposedly committed to human rights West is absolutely deafening.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous, isn't it? It's also just funny because if you think about the way that we would respond, let's say if this was a country called Russia, well, then things fall apart now, don't they?
Can you imagine?
Of course I can. I already know because we've seen it. Look at all these. Look at the number of times that the way Biden and all them talk about, the United Nations is spoken out against the Ukraine invasion and all that. So if you're Russia, also, what's the lesson from this? They're like, yeah, we can just do whatever we want. They're like, don't mean anything. If you're China, if you're any of these people, you're like, look at these. These people are a joke. They're like, all these international institutions mean nothing. I mean, the entire basis of their theory of the international rules-based order and all that is being undermined here. Also, again, I just can't get away from the cost. That costs $1 billion. Plus, we have $100, 100 people who are put in harm's way. The general back of the napkin math is it takes $1 million per year per soldier to keep them deployed abroad. So that's 100 mil, and then you add in another bill. They're like, okay, 1.1 billion here, just to make sure they can do whatever they want to Iran. Not to mention the $1 billion we just fired off in more. Like, why should we pay this bill? Why is this worth it? For what possible reason? And then the damage to the overall U.S. image is just ridiculous now at this point.
Oh, I mean, it's what can you even say at this point? Like, there's the things that we're about to talk about. Things that would have been a controversy a year ago now just happen and no one even notices. I mean, remember there was a whole propaganda campaign around justifying the invasion of one hospital. Now hospitals just get bombed, schools just get bombed, refugee shelters just get bombed. UN peacekeepers, okay? And now we're bombing the hell out of Beirut and dropping 86 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs to get one dude, slaughtering civilians who are not Hamas, have nothing to do with Hamas, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just like a shoulder shrug. I don't know. I mean, it's so incredibly dark, and it is also totally clear that the most nihilistic, most cynical analysis of Israeli plans for genocide, ethnic cleansing, regional war with Iran, dragging us into it, the most cynical analysis that occurred on October 8th turned out to be 100% correct, if not sort of understating where we'd ultimately head.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show. Help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.
I would say we're at the point where we can quite confidently say, we are heading towards a regional war. It is something, unfortunately, I had expected for quite a while. The Middle East is going to go to absolute shit, and it is Israel that's going to instigate this war and cause it to expand. And it has been doing that. It has expanded that war. It has started that war. It has expanded that war. It has been a horrible aggressor and a horrible friend. If I was the United States, I would not appreciate this. But it's almost as if they're held hostage. They have to go along with what Israel tells them to do. Just this blind loyalty to Israel. And has been brought up before. It is also part of it, which I find the most concerning part of it. It is religious extremism that leads to this. It is Christian Zionists, these American evangelicals that want to bring about this end of days prophecy, that it's just going to lead to more war, more death, and more destruction. And it's ridiculous that we have to entertain these people's delusions just so we can be like, hey, don't kill people. But of course, that's not going to happen. When you have extremists, they can go to whatever lengths are necessary to achieve their goals. That's what makes them extremists. So this human toll, this humanitarian crisis, this poor relations, the complete embarrassment for the United States, that how cucked they are to this country, to this tiny, extremely dependent country on them. It means nothing because it's purely ideological.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's intensifying attacks and siege on northern Gaza comes as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is considering implementing a surrender or starve policy in the area. We're joined now by the Israeli journalist Roan recently wrote an article for 972 headlined, "A Plan to Liquidate Northern Gaza is Gaining Steam." Maher is an editor and writer at the independent Israeli news site Local Call, a columnist at 972 magazine. On Saturday, he was awarded the prestigious Golden Dove for Peace by the International Research Institute Disarmament Archive in Rome, Italy. In his acceptance speech, he said, although journalism alone cannot bring peace, it can open spaces of humanity. We welcome you, Maher, to Democracy Now! If you can start off by talking about what you are saying, what the policy of Israel now is in Gaza, the separation of Gaza, what it means as you talk about the starving of Gaza.
Hello. Of course, we don't know exactly what is the Israeli plan now. The general plan, what is called the plan offered by ex-Major General Giora Eiland, speaks about offering the Palestinians in northern Gaza, north of the Netzarim corridor, meaning all Gaza City and its surrounding, offering them a week to evacuate Gaza, go south to the humanitarian area, what is called, near the Muasi, near Deir el-Balach in central Gaza. And then after a week, there will be a total siege on northern Gaza, and a siege meaning no food, no water, no electricity, no medicine, nothing. And in a week time, all those who stay will be considered terrorists that could be hit. The idea is that the civil population will leave, only the Hamas militant will stay, and therefore Israel will be able to clean this area. This is the plan by General Eiland. The plan was not adopted officially, neither by the government, although it is said that Netanyahu is considering it, and nor by the army officially. The operation now in Jabalia that we heard about is officially not part of this plan, but it does seem that many parts of this plan are being implemented on the ground. We heard that there's no supplies coming into northern Gaza at all in the last 2 weeks. We are seeing this evacuation order to the population of northern Gaza and to the hospitals in northern Gaza. So we have the sense here that this plan is being actually implemented without being officially adopted.
One of the people who escaped the Jabalia refugee camp told the Financial Times it seems that the Jabalia camp will be deleted from Gaza's geography. If you can talk more about the intentions of Israel right now. I mean, just in the last week, more than 150 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli airstrikes around the camp, thousands more trapped. Israel encircling the area, leaving only one exit. And what as we speak to you in Tel Aviv, you are an Israeli journalist, what does the Israeli population understand what's happening in Gaza? In the United States, in the corporate broadcast media, you hardly see anything about Gaza now. It's much more focused on Lebanon. And these major networks do not keep repeating that Israel does not allow international journalists into Gaza.
So, again, the Israeli public is also much focused on Lebanon. But even, and certainly after what happened last night, when a drone attack on an army base in Binyamina, which is some 100 kilometers south of the Lebanese border, killing 4 soldiers. So the whole attention is on Lebanon, and this is maybe one of the reasons that we see this attack in Jabalia, because the international attention is on Lebanon and not in Gaza. Anyhow, even before that, there was very little attention in the Israeli media and Israeli public to the consequences of the Israeli attacks on Gaza. And if there was some attention, it was mainly seen as what Israel is doing is right, that destroying Gaza, destroying physically Gaza City and its neighborhoods and the camps around it is a logical thing to do as a response to October 7, because if there will be no Gaza, then there will be no threat. That is how very, very many Israelis see it. So this is, generally speaking, the Israeli response. People don't really understand the connection between this and returning the hostages, don't see a connection with this and continuing of the war. I think there is a large support for this, although I must say, of course, the images are not shown on Israeli TV. People don't see children burning alive in Gaza, as in the Arab world and elsewhere maybe people see. So the whole of the information is not in front of most of the Israeli public.
I wanted to go to a piece that you wrote in 972. Haaretz also wrote about this surrender or starve plan that was proposed last fall by Major General Elan. Explain who Major General Elan is, the idea that anyone who remains behind would face hunger and be treated as Hamas operatives and legitimate military targets, as you've described, Roan, and what exactly this will constitute in Gaza.
Again, the plan by Major General Island, the ex-general, is, as I said, to give the population a week an opportunity to live within a week, and then there will be a siege, and those who stay will be considered as terrorists. Island himself is not really a right wing in the sense he's not part of the religious right. He's not even a supporter of Netanyahu. He comes from a military background, even what is in Israel considered center-left background. So he is not a fanatic supporter of Netanyahu, not at all. He claims in all his interviews that this plan conforms with the international law, that siege is a legitimate way of war as long as you give the population, the civil population, time to live. What does not exist really in his plan, and I think it's not by chance, it's not detailed in his plan, is first of all, what will happen with this population if they will leave? Will they be able to come back? Because this is not written in the plan. It says only that they will have to leave, they will be given humanitarian aid, but there's no promise that they will be able to come back even in a month's time, 2 months' time, 3 months' time to their homes. So this is not there. So therefore the fear for another Nakba is there. And more importantly is he does not detail what will happen if most of the population, as we see now in the description we heard just now, most of the population refuses to leave. It refuses because it saw what happened to the people who left in the beginning of the war, that there's no safe shelter in Gaza, neither in the south. They refuse also for political reasons, because they're afraid that this is the beginning of a new Nakba, and the idea is to really clean Gaza and maybe open it to resettlement by Israelis. So he does not say what will happen if tens of thousands of maybe even hundreds of thousands of Palestinians will decide to stay after this week. What will happen to them? Will Israel starve 500,000 people, 300,000 people, 200,000 people? Nobody really knows the exact number of the people north of Netzarim corridor in the northern part of Gaza Strip. So what are we talking about here? Are we talking about Israel committing an extermination of hundreds of tens of thousands of people if they will choose to stay? This is not detailed in his plan, and I think it's not by chance it's not detailed.
Lying, really somewhat low-tech drone that Hezbollah sent into Israel near Haifa. Explain the significance of Benyamina, this military base that houses the Golani Brigade, and the deaths of 4 Israeli soldiers and the wounding of 60, what this means for Israel right now.
I think, of course, the base itself is not that important. It's a relatively small base, quite far from the border. It's a training base. It's not a combat. It's not for combat units. It's for training. So the base itself is not extremely important. But the fact that a drone arrived so far, almost 100 kilometers from the Lebanese border, and was very precise, heating a dining room in this army bases, what it made is the whole euphoria that was very present in Israel after the pager attacks, after the assassination of Nasrallah and all the leadership of Hezbollah, where most Israelis thought that here Israel is winning the war, that the war will be over, that the Hamas and Hezbollah will surrender and that Iran will back off. What we are seeing now, that this is far from over. And the fact that Hezbollah, after being hit so hard, is still able to hit at the heart of Israel is, of course, very destabilizing. You know, this state of euphoria that was existed for a few weeks, but I think now it's dissipating.
Roan Rappaport, I want to thank you for being with us, editor and writer at the independent Israeli news site Local Call, columnist at 972 Magazine. His piece headlined, "A Plan to Liquidate Northern Gaza is Gaining Steam," and has writes for The Nation magazine.
All right.
This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman. We end today's show looking at Israel's intensifying attacks in Lebanon, where officials said Sunday Israeli strikes across Lebanon during the weekend killed at least 50 people. Israel's facing international condemnation after repeatedly attacking UN peacekeeping forces in southern Israel. At least 5 members of UNIFIL, that's the UN interim force in Lebanon, have been injured in recent days. UN's also accused Israel of forcibly entering and destroying a part of the UNIFIL base near the Israeli border, and rejected calls by the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to remove the peacekeeping forces from the region. On Sunday, UN Secretary General Guterres warned attacks against peacekeepers, quote, may constitute a war crime. For more, we go to Boston, where we're joined by Rami Khoury, Palestinian-American journalist, senior public policy fellow at American University of Beirut. Welcome back to Democracy Now!, Rami. In these last 6 minutes that we have, if you can talk about the significance of the attack on the UN base, the injuring of the 2 UN Indonesian peacekeepers. The UNIFIL is made up of peacekeepers from a number of different countries, including Indonesia and Italy and other places. Essentially, is this attack on the United Nations?
Yes, that's true. It's essentially an attack on the UN. It's an attack against the modern system of the rule of law that the victorious powers in World War II set up after 1945. The UN, development agencies, humanitarian law codes, all kinds of things that were supposed to make the world safe from another genocide as happened in Nazi Germany. And the message of Israel is, this is nonsense. None of this makes sense to us. We're not going to respect any of this stuff. People can make up any laws. They can make up any courts. They can do whatever they want around the world. The people of Israel, and there's a difference between the people of Israel and the Jewish people, because not all Jewish people in the world agree with this, but the people of Israel seem to accept fully the policy of the Israeli government now to kill and burn alive and torture people in Palestine and now in Lebanon in any way they want to achieve what the Israeli government says is its security. But this is a flawed policy, because what we've seen around the region for years is that this kind of savagery only brings about greater responses and greater determination to fight it, now to the point where the state of Iran, not just a militia somewhere, but the government of Iran is involved in the battle, and the U.S. is sending more troops and anti-aircraft defense systems to Israel and expanding its bases around the region. So the message of Israel is, we don't care about anything.
Now, it is interesting to note that, this rules-based international order, like you said, was established in the aftermath of World War II, to hold accountable the people responsible for the atrocities that took place in World War II. And who are the people that are saying, forget those laws, we don't care about those laws mean nothing? I'm sorry, you're no different. You're no different when you acknowledge that, hey, these rules exist after World War II to stop things that happened in World War II from happening again, and you say, hey, we don't care about that. It doesn't matter. You can call yourself the Jewish state as much as you want, but when you act like Nazis, you're going to be treated like Nazis, and you should be treated like Nazis. I'm very sorry. It's very simple. It doesn't matter whether, what your religious identity is. It doesn't matter what your whatever is. And it is insanely ridiculous to pretend that Israel speaks for Jewish people. It's a country like any other. There are plenty of Jewish people who oppose Israel, rightfully so, because it is the modern day equivalent of Nazis. It is going to end up that way. Of course, history is written by the victor, but it is only a matter of time, at least in the public perception, where the word Zionist is going to be treated like the word Nazi. And there is no one to blame but Israel for that.
Except Israel, and we'll destroy the whole region if we need to. And this is something that is possible. I don't think it's going to happen, but a regional conflagration with the US and Iran now facing off against each other, and Iran and Israel firing missiles back and forth at each other, and Hezbollah and Iran both showing that they have the technology to evade Israel's air defense systems and hit precise targets. That they're still only hitting military targets. They haven't gone after civilians as the Israelis have. This is the bigger picture that we have to look at in the region. And the Israelis don't seem to understand that the Palestinian people and Lebanese people and Iranians and everybody else in the region are human beings just like the Israelis and Jewish people are human beings. And they should go back to Masada, the great fortress on the overlooking the Dead Sea, where in 73 AD, the Jewish forces there preferred to die by suicide rather than to be killed or taken slaves by the Romans who had laid siege to them. And now the situation is reversed, that the Israelis are the Romans. They're laying siege to parts of Gaza. They're destroying parts of Lebanon. They're threatening Iran. And the people are not going to surrender. They will die, and many of them are dying. Doctors, as you just heard, saying, we're not going to evacuate our hospitals. We'll die with our patients. This is a human reaction. It's not a Palestinian or an Arab or an Islamic. It's a human reaction that the Jewish people showed the world in their history and in their biblical texts, which are widely adopted, that this is how human beings survive. They survive by defending their dignity and their physical life. And this is where we are now in this battle. And the UN is one of the targets. UNRWA is something that Israel has been trying to shatter for years. They don't allow Guterres to come into Israel anymore. This is a terrible trajectory, and people will fight back against it.
Rami, in this last minute we have, you now have, in light of all of this, still the U.S. is sending 100 troops. This is completely new, and this anti-missile THAAD system. And this in the midst of this, to say the least, extremely significant election, which is neck and neck between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Harris very close in these battleground states that have large Arab American, Lebanese American, Muslim American communities like Michigan. What is the effect of this?
We've seen the effect already that not only Arab and Muslim Americans, but a coalition that they have created with Black Americans and Hispanic Americans, progressive Jews, church groups, labor unions, academics, a big coalition has emerged focused on the refusal as Americans to be a part of a genocidal war by Israel against Palestinians. Americans don't want this to be their legacy. They don't want this to be their policy. And they're saying, well, we'll vote for somebody else. We don't care who's president, because there's not much difference between Kamala Harris and Biden and Trump and anybody else. They've been killing Palestinians and Arabs since the Zionist movement started 100 years ago, which aimed to get the Palestinians out of Palestine and replace them with a Jewish state, which has happened. They have a Jewish state. They want to keep expanding, it seems. And this is not going to work. This is a recipe for catastrophe. So the Americans sending more arms is what America does in its foreign policy as its primary means of...
We have 5 seconds, Rami.
Yeah, so American militarism and Israeli barbarism are only going to create a catastrophe for everybody. And now that Gaza may influence the
We're going to have to leave it there.
election.
Rami Khoury, journalist, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, these time limits often suck during their interviews, but I understand why they exist. Ah! What a mess, what a mess, what a mess. Okay, sweet. Alright, so I have the scar. I constantly forget my loadout. I have the scar, the... Yeah, alright, I have the 3 heals. Okay, bro's still aiming at me. He's not left me alone for a while. Yeah, fuck it. Let's take the vehicle. Sorry, it's just, you know, really end of the game. Did I pick up the crown? Good. And just in case, if I end up winning, you know? Alright. Let's go. I don't know why I was steaming. Oh, I guess because I was using the Ice Spice weapon. Right, well, at least I know where the last guy is. At least what direction he would be coming from. However, I also know he's a better sniper than I am. God! Whoa! Yeah, GG's. No chance. Ugh. What an ass. Oh well. It is what it is.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the latest out of Israel. We wanted to share this with you guys. This was kind of a unique and extraordinary moment on CNN where one of their own guests really kind of called them out to their face about their coverage of Israel and their atrocities, and even used the G word, yes, genocide, on CNN's air. Let's take a listen to that.
In all honesty, a humanitarian crisis is what you deal with when you have a hurricane, what you deal with when you have an earthquake. You have an insult and a humanitarian response. This is my career. This is what I do for a living. Every single person who does this for a living will tell you the same thing. This is different. This is not a humanitarian crisis. Kate, and I'm going to say it very clearly for your viewers to hear, this is genocide. When 70% of the population that are killed are women and children, when the population is starved of food, of water, of medicine, when you have attacks, repeated attacks on all the hospitals, the clinics, the aid distribution sites, the humanitarian aid agencies that try to help. More UN workers have been killed in Gaza than in UN's history. When you have over 900 families that have been exterminated, that have been taken off of the civil registry, killed. When you have over 17,000 children that have lost one or both parents. It's really hard to hear it over and over and over again, framed in the way that it's being framed in the media, which frankly, Kate, is very misleading. It is very misleading. 365 days of this. Death tolls that are so far outdated, we have no idea how many people are killed, but I am genuinely afraid about what we're going to find out when the dust settles. History books will be written on this, and countries will have to reckon, media agencies will have to reckon with their major role in the genocide of an entire population and in the destruction of humanitarian law and rule of order.
So I would bet that CNN anchor got a talking to about not only her choice of guests, but the fact she didn't immediately jump in when some of these truths were being laid out. Oh, forget about it. There's a reason she wasn't invited on Dana Bash's show. But part of why I think it was difficult for Kate Baldwin to jump in there is this woman is not just any random commentator sitting in a studio in New York or DC. She's an American pediatric intensive care physician. She volunteered in Gaza at Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital. And so she is speaking from direct experience of what she personally witnessed and saw on the ground. So, to cut a person like that who's actually been there and seen it and knows what the conditions are like and who is a doctor, an American doctor, to just cut them off and be like, no, you're wrong. I think that becomes a very difficult situation for a CNN anchor. And I think this also illustrates why they have so few voices of this kind on their network, because what can you say? I mean, it's pretty irrefutable what she says, and kudos to her for effectively calling out CNN directly in a very diplomatic way right to their face.
There's been some really grim stuff that's been coming out from a lot of these doctors and the people who work there. And we've interviewed some of them here on the show in the past, but man, some of these reports that are coming out are totally crazy, and they're really not getting a lot of attention.
Let me say too, I don't like to do the whole YouTube censoring us because our videos didn't get large views, but the times we've interviewed people who were on the ground in Gaza, our videos have gotten some of their lowest views.
Yeah,
and
I was surprised by that.
I think it's
a lot of it is age restriction too. So, for example, we did a video yesterday about those people getting burned alive, and we knew it was going to happen.
Yeah,
but it is still kind of weird. I mean, just behind the curtain. Do you really think you should age restrict news? Like, okay, for example, if we were showing a video of the Russians being barbarically attacking Ukrainians, I just don't think it would get age restricted.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I just don't. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I've seen way too, in the 5 years that you and I have been doing this, the amount of selective enforcement that I've seen over the years convinces me that it is completely editorial and it is not applied in a uniform standard
there's no
at
doubt
all.
about that.
I have
Yeah,
way too
there's
much
no
evidence
doubt
to
about
show
that.
people.
Yeah, with those videos, when we've interviewed doctors and witnesses, my recollection is that they weren't actually age restricted. They just, listen, maybe people just weren't interested in content. That's possible, but especially at that period when we were, when we were interviewing those individuals, it was a time of very heightened interest in what was happening in Gaza. These were people whose commentary had gone viral in social media spaces, so there was some demonstrated interest elsewhere in what they had to say. It was possible we just got the title, the thumbnail wrong, whatever, people weren't interested, but it was remarkable to me that every time we did it, it got exceptionally low views in comparison to the rest of the videos on the channel, so just throwing that out there. But I also wanted to spend some time with this New York Times report, the Israeli army's systematic use of Palestinians as human shields. And of course, Bibi Netanyahu and his government and their defenders have used this rhetoric around Hamas and Hezbollah are using people as human shields. They even said that Hezbollah was using the UN aid workers, the UN peacekeepers in Lebanon recently as human shields. And here you have extensive documented evidence that not just as a random one-off, but as part and parcel of a military strategy. The IDF is using Palestinian civilians as human shields to go in ahead of them into, let's say, a house that they fear may be booby-trapped or where there may be a militant. They'll send them, in certain instances, they'll even dress them in an IDF uniform. So if there's any, Hamas bad guy around, they'll get shot at first. And I'm not talking about, not that this would make it acceptable, but I'm not talking about Hamas militants. I'm talking about people that they then release because they're innocent civilians and have nothing to do with Hamas that they're using in this fashion. This is according to, by the way, multiple IDF soldiers who were part of this practice, who were part of the operation in Gaza, who were uncomfortable at times with the use of this practice. And what they document is that, the way they know that this was happening across brigades, across units, that this was, a top-down sort of military strategy, is because they documented instances where there had to be coordination between different squads and high-level military officials involved. They say this practice was used by at least, they documented 11 squads in 5 cities in Gaza, often with the involvement of officers from Israeli intelligence agencies. Palestinian detainees have been coerced to explore places in Gaza where the Israeli military believed Hamas militants had prepared an ambush or a booby trap. Practice has gradually become more widespread since the start of the war last October. The way it was justified when you had some of these soldiers who expressed, I don't know if this is really right. Soldiers said some low-ranking officers tried to justify it by claiming without proof the detainees were terrorists, not civilians held without charge. They said they were told the lives of terrorists were worth less than those of Israelis, even though officers often concluded their detainees did not belong to terrorist groups and later released them without charge, according to an Israeli soldier and the 3 Palestinians who spoke to the Times. So, this is unambiguously a war crime. It's illegal under international law, and I think it's obviously cruel and outrageous. And it also just displays the incredible hypocrisy of the Israeli language around human shields when we now have extensive documented proof that they are systematically using Palestinians as human shields themselves.
Yeah, it's really, it's disturbing too, especially in the context of a lot of the Lebanon situation that we have right now. By the way, everybody, want to give an update. Those troops have been on the ground now officially for 24 hours. More troops are on their way, so that's great. We've got U.S. soldiers now, the THAAD missile defense system. Israel, by the way, has said that they agreed not to strike oil and nuclear facilities, just sheer Iranian military facilities.
See.
It's not an issue. After we bribed them, and now shipped them $1 billion weapon system in addition to 100 U.S. troops. So definitely things are calming down, and you have no reason to worry that this won't continue completely.
For sure.
Indeed.
All right.
Yes, great stuff.
Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you. Great Counterpoint show for you tomorrow. We'll see you then. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show.
Okay, can I just say that kill was phenomenal, the one with the car. Yes, it sucks that I can't drift anymore, so I can, do those tight turns. Yeah, that kill was amazing. But yeah, to the topic of the video, which I think is more important. It's just every single time. How Israel has managed to completely ruin its reputation non-stop. Conclude how untrustworthy it is. I just don't have words. Just non-stop, constantly proving that they cannot, the words of the Israeli government cannot be trusted whatsoever. It's every story, you hear the most outrageous things, and you think this is as bad as it's gonna get. There's no way. This is as crazy as it gets, and then it just becomes normal, and it's just the next thing, and then it happens again and again and again, and we become numb to it. But oh well. In terms of what's going to happen with Iran, I mean, now Israel has the THAAD system, so what are they going to target? What are they going to do? Is this just going to be minor? Is it just a deterrent? I doubt it. As Israel gets more emboldened, it's never held accountable, it's constantly on the offense, and it can get away with literally whatever. It's going to keep pushing, and it has done so over and over. And so what's the point of holding your breath? What are you expecting to change for literally no reason? They have no reason to change. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see how bad it gets, because I can only imagine that it will get more destructive as they will attack Iran. Iran is going to respond, and that is important for me to emphasize. Respond. And yeah. And the US will back up Israel every single time. It is the imperial core. It is the most powerful empire on the planet right now, and hey, what are you going to do against that? It's might makes right mentality. I can get away with whatever because I have the weapons to do so. It doesn't matter about what's right or wrong. I decide what's right or wrong because I'm, I have the military prowess to enforce my version of right and wrong. Just not looking forward to another world war, And the thing is, if Iran does get struck, it's going to attack Saudi Arabia. Oil prices is going to go up. If you think this is not going to affect you, oil prices everywhere is going to go up. If you don't care about the human lives that are going to be lost, if you don't care about people, whatever, that's fine. I disagree. I think it's wrong. But hey, you do you. I can't tell you, what you should or shouldn't care about. But if you think, hey, this is, some Middle East stuff, doesn't affect me, I'm, a first world country, I'm safe, I'm secure. Yeah, sure. For now. I agree. You're not going to be amongst the first people damaged or affected. 100%. But eventually, you will be affected. Whether at the very least, the way you're going to get affected is going to be your pocketbook. Oil prices are going to go up, and you're not going to be able to afford the little things that you were able to afford with, how things are nowadays. No way. I thought I had him. Oh well. I did say completely still, so I guess that makes sense.
All right, y'all, welcome to the show. We got a lot to dive into, so in just a second, CNN tells the truth about what's happening in Gaza right now. And
I assume this is the same clip that we just saw. While, yes, I understand it might not be as fun to see the same clips over and over, I appreciate listening to multiple people talk about the same thing, hearing more opinions on it. Again, this is just, I'm assuming this is the same clip. I might be wrong, but we'll see.
This is quite a clip because, I don't know, you tell me, has this word, the G word, ever been uttered on CNN before in terms of Israel's actions? So we'll dive into that. I have more evidence for you of Trump just going mask off, full fascist. Wait until you hear the law he wants to enact. So, I remember when this happened with the Insurrection Act. People were like, well, what the fuck is the Insurrection Act? And you're looking it up, and it's like a super old law, and he wants to invoke it to go after George Floyd protesters. We got another example of something like that, and it's going to blow your mind. Then we'll get to Tim Walz has been released from the basement. He is dismantling Fox News hosts to their face. Michael Moore has a scorching hot Biden take that I want to share with all you guys. And then later on, we have a MAGA pastor delivering one of the most insane prayers I've ever heard in my life, and he's taking aim at, and I quote, homosexual lesbian spirits.
What?
Okay. All right, so you guys know the drill. Everybody do me a big favor. Please like and subscribe, and you can support the show on Patreon. $2 a month or $5 a month goes a long way. We don't take any money from any billionaires or any foreign governments, or we don't even have any brand deals or anything like that. It's the default ads on YouTube and your guys, small dollar donations that keep us going. And a massive thank you to everybody who does support this channel. It could not happen without you. Could not happen without you. All right. So here we go. Let's go ahead and dive into it. So this video shocked me. This is on CNN. On CNN, they're talking about Israel and Gaza, and we get this truth bomb dropped. Here we go.
This humanitarian crisis with the additional factor of Gaza is about to enter the winter, which often brings heavy rain to the region.
Kate, in all honesty, a humanitarian crisis is what you deal with when you have a hurricane, what you deal with when you have an earthquake. You have an insult and a humanitarian response. This is my career. This is what I do for a living. Every single person who does this for a living will tell you the same thing. This is different. This is not a humanitarian crisis. Kate, and I'm going to say it very clearly for your viewers to hear, this is genocide. When 70% of the population that are killed are women and children, when the population is starved of food, of water, of medicine, when you have attacks, repeated attacks on all the hospitals, the clinics, the aid distribution sites, the humanitarian aid agencies that try to help. More UN workers have been killed in Gaza than in UN's history. When you have over 900 families that have been exterminated, that have been taken off of the civil registry, killed. When you have over 17,000 children that have lost one or both parents. When you have bakeries, aid distribution sites, churches, mosques, schools, and in the last 3 days, in the last 24 hours in fact, a hospital today that was bombed, as you just reported, the hospital where I personally was working, and I can tell you, they are working every second and every day to try and sustain life when Israel's strategy and evidence on the ground suggests that they're doing the exact opposite. They were targeted today. There was a rehabilitation hospital, a rehabilitation center that was targeted in the last 24 hours, and there was an orphanage that was targeted earlier this week. These are the types of places that are being targeted. And so it's really hard to hear it over and over and over again framed in the way that it's being framed in the media, which Frankly, Kate, is very misleading. It is very misleading. 365 days of this. Death tolls that are so far outdated, we have no idea how many people are killed, but I am genuinely afraid about what we're going to find out when the dust settles. History books will be written on this, and countries will have to reckon, media agencies will have to reckon with their major role in the genocide of an entire population and in the destruction of humanitarian law and rule of order.
The U.S. doctors who were in Gaza, I believe it's 99 of them, released what's called the Gaza letters, and we covered it the other day, and they explain in detail the things that they've seen, like they've... like on a daily basis, children would come in with very specific gunshot wounds directly to the brain and to the heart. A doctor said, I've never held a child's brain in my hand, but once it happened once, it kept happening. Like deliberate targeting of children. And according to these 99 U.S. doctors who were in Gaza, they say the death toll is at least 118,000. And that's what the Lancet says. It's at least 186,000 direct war deaths and indirect war deaths. And look, just so everybody understands, this is how this kind of stuff functions, right? Every time there's a genocide or there are continued atrocities, in the moment, we never have all the information. We never have all the numbers, and we might never actually know the exact number. But it's almost always a massive and severe undercount in the moment, right? And this is why, you know, the UN numbers are at like 41,000 dead Palestinians. I often use on this show the Euro Med Monitor numbers. That's another human rights group. Their number has always been a little higher than the UN at 48,000 dead Palestinians. I think they just crossed 50,000 actually, dead Palestinians. But even that, like that's only hardcore, verified, have the records, that plus people still under the rubble who've been there for an extended period of time and they have no chance of living. But what I'm seeing now is consistently experts in the field coming out saying it's almost certainly over 100,000 dead. And what I need you guys to all understand is that is not just a number. It is so easy to come out here and say 100,000 plus dead. That is not just a number. That is over 100,000 individual, specific stories of people with hopes and dreams and families and things they care about and places they go and jobs and interests in school and games they like to play. Like, these are all people.
Yes,
and
Kyle,
the Euro Med Monitor number
you're
says at least
forgetting
90% innocent civilians were killed.
America,
This CNN
so it
reporter
doesn't
is
matter.
100% verifying that. And basically saying, if you
They're
call it a
brown,
humanitarian
they're Arab.
crisis,
Who gives a
you're
shit,
basically
right?
doing genocide apologia. And I think that's fair. I think that's accurate. And she seems like since she's been on the ground, her eyes have been, you know, her eyes have been opened, and she realizes, Jesus Christ, we are not doing this justice. We are not doing this justice. And at her point about the history books, it's kind of crazy, because if you pay close attention now, they're already giving you everything. Like the number of outright genocidal Nazi-like statements from top Israeli government officials. That already is an endless list that could fill an entire book of shit they say, right? Mix that with what they're actually doing, and she lays out all of it right there perfectly. Bombing schools, bombing hospitals, bombing UN buildings, bombing civilian infrastructure, bombing power plants, not allowing in the food, the fuel, the water, the electricity. Here's a game you should play. Ready? I want you to come up with, in your own mind, make up some depraved kind of attack, and then check whether or not Israel's done it. Because like 9 times out of 10, Israel will have done the thing you just made up in your mind, which is the most depraved kind of shit you could ever think of. Right? How about having concentration camps and anally raping innocent civilians who are kept there to death? Oh, would you look at that? Israel's done it. How about firing gas at Irish UN peacekeepers in Lebanon? Yep, that's right. Israel's done that too. How about bombing not only a hospital, but after the hospital was bombed, they set up tents outside of the hospital to act as the new hospital, and then those tents get bombed too. Oh, that's right. That literally just happened the other day. I'm telling you, you are not creative enough to come up with something that Israel hasn't already fucking done. And the fact that we're also passive and nonchalant and blasé, like this is going on, and it's just like, yeah, I guess that's what's happening. For the first, like, maybe 4 months, 5 months, every move, you know, people kept their eyes on it, right? And I even noticed it on this channel. First 4 or 5 months, every time I'd report on it, boom, a lot of eyeballs. After a while, people just, like, you know, they sort of bake into their mental process. Yeah, Israel's barbaric, they do fucked up shit, and Palestinians have been victimized endlessly. And it's just like, I kind of got it. I don't need to know the specifics. But you do need to know the specifics. Because, again, every single one of these things is going to be written down, accounted for in a history book, and it will be, you know, it will be like we lived through Nazi Germany. There was an ad that was released recently where it was like, you know, the year 2040, and it's a museum about the Gaza genocide. And it's like, what were you doing during the genocide, Grandpa? Like, that's in the ad. And here you have a CNN reporter, like, CNN, corporate milquetoast media, and they're talking like this. That tells you everything. So, like, sure, these flimsy justifications might technically work in the sense that the U.S. regurgitates them and everybody just keeps moving on business as usual. But historically, it's not going to work. Everybody's going to know, oh, Israel was starting all the shit. Israel was bombing the top Hamas peace negotiator from the political wing in Tehran. Everybody's going to know they assassinated top Hezbollah officials in Beirut. Everybody's going to know Israel launched the first strike. And everybody also, by the way, here's an interesting fact. You know, I saw Mehdi talking about this week. Isn't it weird? You get all these stories of Israel bombs an orphanage and a hospital and these innocent people and those innocent people. And then it's like, oh, and Hezbollah attacked in Israeli military base. So it's so bizarre that the ones who are called terrorists endlessly here in the U.S., wow, look at that. Iran the other day attacked an Israeli airbase. Hezbollah attacked an Israeli military base. Isn't it weird? So Israel gets to attack all these civilian targets, and no matter what, they're not called terrorists. And then Hezbollah and Iran could attack military targets, and somehow they're still terrorists. The propaganda is not going to work. People have eyes. People can see what's going on, man. And the fact it's gotten this far, there's a special place in hell for everybody who helped facilitate this and participate in this, right? There is a special place. Joe Biden's hands will never be clean of the blood that are on them right now. Netanyahu, same thing. Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, same thing. These people are war criminals. They're absolute war criminals. And I've run out of ways to describe this accurately for you guys because nothing I can say can do justice to what's actually happening on the ground, the pictures and the videos and the reality. And this CNN reporter seems genuinely shocked and taken aback by the nature of what's going on in 2024. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.
Okay. Oh. Sorry. Give me a sec. Thank you, Kyle.
We are back, and we are joined by my friend, comedian, host of the Bitchuation Room podcast, Francesca Fiorentini.
Thank you, Emma, where you saw this video.
All right, so Bill Maher did a new rule segment here going after Chappell Roan because Chappell Roan was critical of Israel. And so, of course, that's not allowed from Mr. Real Time. I'm going to keep it real, bro. Israel's right about everything, bro. I'm going to keep it real, bro. So here we go. Let's take a look and we'll break it down as we go.
But then we get to Israel. And Chappell, this is where we must put to the test your pledge to use critical thinking and to question whether what you're reading on social media is true, because it isn't. There's a whole history of the Middle East that you and your fans aren't hearing about. So why don't you let me be your spirit guide through this?
I genuinely think this is the smuggest man who's ever walked the planet Earth. I mean, his, like, arrogant, know-it-all attitude is just so over the top. And when he gets going on something and he's wrong, it is the most unbearable, insufferable, unwatchable shit, and we're about to go through that right now.
But before I do, let me tell you a little about myself, since you may have no idea who I am, considering that when this show went on the air, you were barely old enough to be told you were in the wrong body.
Ha 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 ha, get it? Trans joke. Ha 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 ha.
So, my name is Bill Maher. I'm 35.
Hilarious.
This show is such a relic of a dead age.
I've been to all of Diddy's freak-off parties, and
Yeah,
Yep.
but unironically,
I
somebody
believe
better
that.
check the record. I bet you he has been to Diddy parties. I bet you he has been. Hear me now, quote me later.
And I work at the same place as Euphoria. In fact, she's right down the hall. My TikTok handle is BNasty, and I go live every Friday night with the anime filter on. And I once won a smoke-off against Willie Nelson, Woody Harrelson, and Snoop. Okay, that one's true.
Guys, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. This man has been making the same joke for like 30 fucking years, dog. He does the, I smoke weed. I'm really cool. I smoke weed. I also have sex. And marriage is stupid, okay? Like, we get it, Bill. We get it. We get it. Have you never, like, evolved out of your fucking, like, frat boy era?
No,
we get
he
it.
hasn't.
You smoke weed. Oh, you're so edgy, bro. Legal in, like, freakishly high number of states. Oh, you're so edgy, bro. Polls at, like, 70% to be legal everywhere. Bro, you're such an outsider, bro. You smoke weed, bro. Like, okay, we get it. Jesus Christ.
Look, truth be told, I'm a baby boomer. I remember phone booths and cars with ashtrays and vaginal sex. And I didn't learn about the Middle East from TikTok, which is a Chinese company whose totalitarian government would just love to have America's youth hating America. That's some of that algorithm stuff you say you want to look into.
So all those videos that you see of missiles being shot at the faces of Palestinian toddlers and UN buildings being bombed, like, ignore all that because something, China, TikTok, they want you to hate America. So what okay, Bill, hold on. So did those bombings not happen? Did those bombings not happen? Do we not have like 48,000 or more dead Palestinians, 90% of which are civilians? Is that not like you're not even trying, bro? You're not even trying. This is embarrassing.
Now, first off, the fact that you don't know much history isn't your fault. You live in the United States, where the schools stopped doing that whole teaching facts thing a while ago.
Yes, I know, Bill. Oh, everything I believe is a fact, bro. Everything you believe is an opinion, and you're wrong, bro. Like, okay, Jesus Christ.
But getting all your history from TikTok is like getting all your calories from Hostess.
By the way, you don't even need to get all of your news from TikTok in order to understand what's happening in Gaza. I got a clip for you that we're going to cover tomorrow of a reporter on CNN directly saying to the host, this is not a humanitarian catastrophe or disaster or whatever other euphemism you want to use. It's a genocide. This was on CNN. They were saying this. On CNN. But it's only TikTok where Israel is doing bad things against Palestinians. No, Bill, no. Why don't you just come out and admit and say, I am working backwards from my conclusion and I think Israel is right no matter what. Just say that. Yeah. Just say that. And say, yeah, I have a bias against Muslims. I think they are, by definition, barbaric and backwards and primitive. Therefore, I'm taking the opposite side of that. Just say what's actually going on here, what's actually motivating you, because there is no doubt that you are working backwards from your conclusion.
You know, you're moved by what you see on there. We all are, the dead Palestinian bodies. But it's odd.
Yeah, Bill's very moved by that, as you can tell. He's very moved by that. He's going to proceed to suck Israel off for another 10 minutes here.
Your generation didn't seem nearly as moved by the Jewish bodies on October 7th. You killed at Coachella this year, but when Hamas kills at a music festival, it's a whole other thing.
Oh my God. He acts as if it wasn't like literally 7 idiot tankies online who were like celebrating October 7th. The overwhelming reaction, correctly so, to innocent civilians being killed in Israel was, God damn, that's evil and that's horrible and that's terrorism and that's wrong and that should never happen. And terrorism is bad. That was the reaction. He makes it seem like what? Everybody in Gen Z was doing fucking cartwheels and backflips and took out their pom-poms and said, yay, Hamas? What fucking planet are you living on?
The sight of so many young women raped at a music festival, make it a little personal?
Bro, that's so evil and so bad and so wrong. And I will proceed to say absolutely nothing about the Israeli concentration camps where they're holding Palestinians, where they are anally graping them. And by the way, we caught it on video. And by the way, one of the people who was anally graped ended up dying. An innocent Palestinian civilian anally graped by the IDF on video. Bill Maher has never mentioned it and will never mention it ever.
And the one that did it is now a celebrity.
Hardened by the propaganda you see on TikTok, which likes to call the Jews colonizers. But colonizers are intruders who have no history in an area, like when Spain conquered the Mayans, or when your mom took over Facebook. When the Dutch took over South Africa, they had no history to the land. They just wanted it. But Israel is the Jews' homeland, and Jews have always lived there. I cap you not. You can look it up. It's in this book called The Bible, which is horribly wrong about sex ed, slavery, science, and cooking, but the archaeology checks out.
Literally the first and last time Bill Maher will ever take anything said in the Bible at face value and assert that it's accurate. This is the guy who spends 24/7 shitting on the Bible, calling it ridiculous, calling it fairy tales, calling the people who believe in it morons. And then now all of a sudden, when it's convenient for an issue where he agrees that the Bible says it, so it must be so.
As the Jews built a temple with a really big wall 7 centuries before Muhammad or Islam ever existed, and sure as shit, you can still go there and touch it. Calling Jews colonizers in Israel is like calling Native Americans colonizers here. It's ridiculous.
Oh my God, oh my God. Oh my God. Bill Maher, these are Europeans. They're Europeans. They are not indigenous to the land. Oh my God, he's such a liar. He knows the difference between an Ashkenazi Jew and a Sephardic Jew. He knows that. He knows that there's way more evidence that the Palestinians who are there are descendants of those Jews from back in the day. He knows that.
Yep.
He doesn't care. These are lies on purpose. He is lying on purpose. He's trying to do the whole like, bro, they're indigenous and they're the victims. That's what it is. They're not a settler, colonial, expansionist apartheid state who's bombing all their neighbors because they want to take more territory. That's not what this is, bro. They're like the Native Americans, bro. They're victims. They're victims as they launch more missiles at toddlers on a daily basis.
Chappell, did you know that for 2,000 years, Palestine was like an Uber driver with a 3-star rating? Nobody wanted it. And there was never any Arab country called Palestine. It was an orphan province. And if you ask people what they thought about it back then, they'd say it gave them the ick.
Love to shit on a people who are currently in the midst of being genocided. Love doing that.
After World War II, and after the Jews were very nearly wiped out by an actual attempted genocide, they decided it was time for their historic homeland to be an actual country, so that for once they could defend themselves.
So they went and took a piece of land where Zionists pretended like there weren't any people there, but there actually were a lot of people there, right? You're going to say that part, right? You're about to say that right now, right?
UN, we like them, right? Yeah, they agreed and voted a country for each of the indigenous peoples. One side agreed to that, but the Arabs had a slightly different proposal. They said, how about we keep it all and wipe you out?
So since you're citing the UN as if, you know, this decision was great and everybody should abide by it, I'm sure you're going to agree with the, what, dozens of times the UN General Assembly passed resolutions saying we want to create a two-state solution with a Palestinian state along the 1967 borders. You're obviously in favor of that too, right, Bill? Right? You're going to bring that up right now, right? That, hey, the UN established in Israel, but they've also been screaming from the rooftops for decades now that there needs to be a Palestinian state and it needs to be along the 1967 borders. You're going to say that, right? I'm sure you're also going to give the context that the UN existed for roughly like 7 minutes before they decided, yeah, we're going to create an Israel and a Palestine, and even though Palestinians make up the majority of the people in the region, they're going to get a smaller portion of the land, right? I know you're going to bring that up because you're an honest guy and you care about facts, right? So you're going to tell people that the UN existed for like 7 fucking minutes when they decided, let's partition the land and let's give the group that had more people there less of the land, right? You're going to bring that up, right?
Chappell, if you think it was repressive growing up queer in the Midwest, try the Mideast.
Here we go.
You're a female drag queen, and you sing, I fucked you in the bathroom when we went to dinner, your parents at the table. Yeah, that wouldn't fly in Gaza, although you would straight off the roof. The same goes for knee-deep on the passenger seat and you're eating me out. Yeah, my guess is the morality police would figure out that one's not about the drive-thru.
They literally have like 3 arguments they recycle all the time. And it always comes back to, oh yeah? Why don't you try to be gay in Gaza, bro? Why don't you try to be gay in Gaza, bro? Why don't you try to be gay in Gaza, bro? This is what they come back to every time. As if the other side is bad on the issue of gay rights, that gives us the right to genocide them. Like, that's literally the argument. We get to kill as many of you as we want because you're bad on gay rights. Look, there are neighbors on our block who are anti-gay marriage. Does that mean I'm allowed to drone strike their house? Do you realize how fucking stupid you sound? God, this is, like, again, their propaganda is so flimsy and so bad and so pathetic, but they assert it so arrogantly as if it's like debate-ending arguments.
Kill your feather boa-wearing ass. You know when you sing that LA is where boys and girls can all be queens every single day? You're welcome, but offer not good in the West Bank. Chappell, you're not wrong that oppression is bad, or that Palestinian and many other Muslim populations are oppressed and deserve to be freed. You just have it completely ass-backwards as to who is doing the oppressing.
Oh my God! So you can never criticize Israel in any context ever because I've decided they're enlightened Western types who believe in democracy, even though that's not fucking true at all. But what? Jiu-jitsu move! Blame Hamas for everything. Even when Israel kills 48,000 Palestinians, 90% of which are innocent civilians. Even when Israel bombs over 20 hospitals in Gaza. Jiu-jitsu move! Hamas's fault, even though Israel shot those missiles and killed those children. He is the dumbest, most black and white thinker you've ever heard in your life.
Is a terrorist mafia that took over Gaza. The Revolutionary Guard is a terrorist mafia that took over Iran. ISIS is a terrorist mafia that took over Iraq.
Notice what he did there? The comparison of Hamas and Iran to ISIS.
Yep.
It's slick. It's all Hamas, Iran, ISIS. Terrorism, it's all, you know, they're all roughly the same, even though there are colossal differences between every single one of those things he just said.
Taliban
Not according
is a
to
terrorist
Bill.
mafia that took over Afghanistan.
They're all
These are the
Muslim,
oppressors.
so it's
And
fine.
when you make it all about Israel, you take the pressure off of them. You enable them.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm seriously gonna like chop my nose off with a meat cleaver. I can't listen to this anymore. I can't. Like, just totally memory hole, totally sweep under the rug, totally don't acknowledge the countless genocidal statements made by top Israeli government officials. Memory hole, the bombing of the hospitals and the schools and the power plants and the UN facilities. We just got the story that Israel was attacking Irish UN peacekeepers in Lebanon. But you're not allowed to criticize that. You're not allowed to talk about that because then you're emboldening Hamas or some bullshit. Like, what do you do with somebody like this?
The Iranian regime has killed 600 protesters after a 22-year-old woman died in police custody following her arrest for the crime of wearing her head covering incorrectly. Just to be clear, that's your team.
Oh, he just says it. Oh my God, he just says it. Look at this smug, like, I'm telling you I'm telling you how it is.
Yeah, it's gross.
Bill, see, this is the problem. You're thinking about this in terms of teams. I'm on the Israeli team, bro. How about you just be on team anti-war crime? So when anybody commits a war crime, it's bad and wrong and condemnable. When Hamas kills civilians, bad and wrong and condemnable.
Agreed.
When Israel responds by killing 20 times, 30 times the number of civilians, bad and wrong and contemptible.
Agreed.
Like, and
However,
he brings this up as if it's like, Chappell Roan's going to hear this and be like,
if we're going to call this a response, which ridiculous to say, but if we're going to call that a response, then sure, we're going to have to call October 7th a response to an occupation, to a siege for 50 years. Right? Suddenly that one doesn't sound so nice, does it?
Right, Bill. Before I was okay with 600 protesters being killed because a woman didn't wear a hijab, and now I'm against it. No, I'm sure she's against it then, she's against it now, but this is all a total fucking red herring and a total non sequitur. Because we're talking about Israeli war crimes that you cheerlead and support. He said on his podcast the other day he supports Netanyahu still. Imagine supporting Benjamin Netanyahu still after everything he's done. That's like supporting modern-day Hitler. So anyway, I can't watch anymore. I was planning on watching the whole thing. I can't watch anymore. It's too pathetic. And look at this smug fucking face. Holy shit. That might be the most punchable face I've ever seen in my life. Look, they're not even trying. The Israeli propagandists are not even trying anymore. I mean, this is like embarrassing, and a fucking second grader could poke holes through the pathetic logic. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.
Oh, thank you for the high grounds. I'm just gonna chill here for a bit until they decide to move, or they get smart enough to try to blow up my my helicopter. Come on, that's clearly the smart move. It's gonna reveal your location, which means I can shoot you. But definitely the smart thing to do is try to blow up the helicopter. It's gonna force me off of this roof. It's gonna destroy most of this roof. How did I not see them moving? Oh, there they are. Damn it! Okay, cool. I lost track of both people I was fighting. Oh, nope, they're there. Yeah, you're gonna... Snoop. I'm sorry, bud. My god, how much health does this dude have? Ah. I mean, you made it here eventually. Why are you like this? And very much so leaving you alone. Leaving you? Left you alone? Left you alone. Makes more sense. Even still in there? No idea. Zone is coming. Ooh, there you are. Hey, buddy. Ooh. I did just want to make sure I land above you. I can't see where they are. Let them know. Those are butterflies. Where are you at? Pretty sure I saw someone over there. Excuse me? Aha, thank you. Yeah, you go ahead and fight each other. I'm just gonna hold on here. Sure hope I have my shotgun equipped. Thank you, buddy. Am I gonna tank the zone? I'm gonna tank the zone. No! You bastard. Aha. You almost did something there. Alright. Got a much better AR now. Much better shotgun. And an infinite use movement gear. Oh, it's just me and one more dude. I should probably relax a bit. That's my helicopter. My helicopter. I just need good cover. This is pretty good cover. Now let's take a look at the zone. This seems like the highest point. Oh my god, this is the highest point? No, that's the height. No, that's outside the zone. Oh no. Oh no. I was gonna say that house would have been perfect, and he still has Snoop. Oh no. Now he has the high ground. Should have killed you when I had the chance. I mean, I know he's there. That's where he is. Damn it. Yeah, these rocks can tank another one. Well, they can't tank another one, but they're still up. There we go. That's these gone. I need him to lose his bot though. Bro is slick. No, no, no. Reload, reload, reload. I have everything I need. Haha, oh no, my heart is beating fast. I like this is fun. Risky play for sure, but it's fun. Snoop! Get in the car, get in the car, get in the car, get in the car, get in the car. What the hell, man? Maybe? Nope. Maybe? Nope. Very risky play, very risky play. I mean, I lost a lot of health there. And hey, look, the spot where I'm at's pretty good. Don't know where the next zone is gonna be. Shit! Ooh, that hurt him. That hurt him bad. I should capitalize. No, this stupid bot. Gotcha, bitch. Never gonna... Yeah, alright. I'll leave it at that. Whew. Sorry, I know that round lasted for way too long. Let's ready up and let's start up the next video.
This is
Thank you for
Democracy
your
Now!,
patience.
democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Protests over the U.S. arming Israel are continuing. On Monday morning, more than 200 Jewish activists and their allies were arrested as they blocked entrances to the New York Stock Exchange on Wall Street. The protesters were calling for an Israeli arms embargo, an end to war profiteering by companies like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin.
This is what I mean. It's also insane to be like, ah, yes, Jewish people, all Jewish people support Israel, or the majority of Jewish people support Israel. These people are openly putting themselves out there. Hey, we're Jewish. This country does not represent us. These actions do not represent us. And we want nothing to do with them. Because you know what? If you tie those horrendous crimes to Jewish people, you're going to get an increase in anti-Semitic hatred. That's insane. Why would you possibly want that unless you're a country that wants Jewish people to live in constant fear and be like, hey, the only place you're safe is if you move to our country and grow our borders.
The protest was organized by Jewish Voice for Peace, which said the action was the largest act of civil disobedience in history outside the New York Stock Exchange. Participants in the protests included descendants of Holocaust survivors, as well as Emmy Award-winning comedian Eric Andre, Academy Award-winning filmmaker Laura Poitras, the acclaimed artist Nan Golden, the Oscar-nominated actress Deborah Winger, and the artist Molly Crabapple. Police forcibly removed many of the peaceful protesters, including our next guest, Elena Stein. She's director of organizing and strategy for Jewish Voice for Peace. She was arrested, held for 8 hours. Welcome to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us, Elena. There's a very dramatic picture of you being taken out, held, carried by police on your back. You're wearing the T-shirt you're wearing right now, Stop Arming Israel. Explain what this action was all about.
First of all, thank you so much for having me, Amy and Juan. I've been watching Democracy Now! Every morning for about 15 years, so appreciate everything you all do. Yesterday, 500 Jewish New Yorkers and friends shut down business as usual at the New York Stock Exchange on Wall Street, demanding, the epicenter of global capital, demanding that the U.S. stop arming Israel and stop profiting from genocide. And, as we arrived in the morning, we were learning the news that just that night, Israel had bombed the Al-Aqsa hospital and had set at least 30 tents ablaze, full of people who had already been displaced, who still had IVs in their arms from being at the hospital, burning people alive. And this comes after days and days of massacring whole families in the Jabalia refugee camp as part of the larger strategy to block off, to starve, to essentially complete the ethnic cleansing of northern Gaza, where 400,000 people are. This is being called a genocide within a genocide. People are posting their final goodbyes. So we are filled with horror beyond words and are attempting just to embody just an ounce of that refusal in our actions. And of course, what's so important for all of us here in the US to understand is that this is being done with US bombs. Those bombs that are massacring family after family in this war of extermination. Because make no mistake, that is the goal, extermination. It is being done with US bombs, with US weapons, and with US cover, with shielding Israel from accountability at any international institution. Now, the Biden administration wants you to believe that the reason the US is arming and funding and covering the Israeli government like this is for the sake of Jewish safety, right? This is the moral cover that they use. This is the justification used to cloak the entire enterprise. And so we are there to say, we reject this myth, this sick myth, with every fiber of our beings. We refuse to let our histories, our identities, our traditions be used to torture, to starve, to massacre, to erase Palestinians. And we are there to say the true interests of the Biden administration, the true interests of the US government are this, in its own imperial interests and its own financial interests. And so we are there to say to the US, stop arming Israel, stop profiting from genocide.
And Elena, could you talk about why you chose the stock exchange? Because the reality is that every war that the United States has ever fought, some people have made money off of, some sector of American capitalism. And in this case, could you talk about the arms makers and the huge, obscene amounts of money they are making from this war? Companies like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin.
That's exactly right. So most know that every year, the U.S. sends $3.8 billion in military funding to Israel. Now, first thing to know is that this is an unprecedented amount of money. There is no amount of public taxpayer money going annually to any other country like this. The next thing to know is that none of that money is used. When we hear the word aid, we might think, oh, that's for recovery from a natural disaster or for housing or education. No, all of this money has to be used on the Israeli military. for military purposes. And not only that, but all that money has to be used then back in the United States on U.S. defense contractors, on U.S. weapons corporations. So we see here that the entire enterprise has the goal of propping up the U.S.'s war economy. Now, $3.8 billion is just the amount of money typically going in taxpayer public funding. It is nothing to say of the billions going in private funding. But this year, the U.S. sent in public funding, the U.S. government sent $18 billion in taxpayer funds to the Israeli military. There are no words to describe how unprecedented this is. And so when we say that it's all in the service of propping up the U.S.'s war economy, it works. This year, the stock prices of weapons manufacturers were skyrocketing. Last year, if you were to invest $10,000 in Raytheon, right now, you would have $18,000 in just 1 year. That's an 80% return in 1 year. Raytheon is the firm making the bunker buster bombs that are prohibited from use in civilian areas that Israel is currently using right now in southern Lebanon. Now, not only that, over 50 at least members of Congress and their spouses are invested in Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, two of the leading weapons manufacturers. So we can see they are quite literally profiting from this genocide, and these are the people who are voting on increased funding and arms to the Israeli military. Our elected officials should never be able to profit off of genocide. They are there to carry out, supposedly, the will of the people. And you think about this. Just last week, Hurricane Helene ravaged communities across Appalachia, right? Killing hundreds of people, displacing thousands. This is just 1 week before Hurricane Milton did the same, ravaged Florida. And before the wreckage could even be accounted for, after Hurricane Helene, FEMA reported a $9 billion shortfall. At the exact same time, President Biden announced that he'd be releasing another $8.7 billion in military funding to the Israeli military. This is almost the exact same amount of money. So what we are seeing is that quite literally, the United States government is choosing to massacre en masse Palestinians over supporting our communities here in the United States who are trying to recover from this devastating climate crisis, as well as the chronic disinvestment from their communities. And so that's why we were there with 500 people yesterday to say, outside of Wall Street, this epicenter of global capital. And yes, as you said, Juan, Wall Street has been profiting off of genocide, every genocide of this country since the founding of this country, since the founding genocides. Wall Street was actually built as the first marketplace to trade enslaved people kidnapped from the shores of Africa and then traded in 1711 on Wall Street by the European settlers who'd also carried out the genocide against the indigenous people of Manhattan. And we were there yesterday on Indigenous Peoples Day, and so that's part of why this history is so important to root in. And we pay homage to the many movements that have been protesting Wall Street ever since. From ACT that actually had its founding protest on Wall Street in 1987, delaying the bell, and actually one of the organizers of that demonstration was with us yesterday in jail, which is so meaningful, to Occupy Wall Street, to many Palestinian-led demonstrations at Wall Street this year. And so that is why we were there to say altogether, fund FEMA, not genocide, fund housing, not genocide, fund healthcare, not genocide.
I want to turn to Samaya Awad of Adala Justice Project. She's a Palestinian who participated in the protest you were arrested at the New York Stock Exchange. She's speaking here to CBS News.
We refuse for our government to continue doing this, using our tax dollars while our country is suffering from climate disaster, from lack of health care.
I also want to turn to 82-year-old Ross Pachetsky, a MacArthur Fellow, former anti-Vietnam War activist, current member of Jewish Voice for Peace. On Monday, she was one of the oldest people to chain herself to the Wall Street gates. She told CBS why she participated in the protest.
A lot of our resources are going to war. Jews have a long tradition of opposing war.
Ross Pachetsky is a professor emeritus at Hunter. As we hear those voices, Elena, you yourself are the granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor. Talk about that, how that informs your activism today, as the back of your T-shirt that says "Stop Arming Israel" on the front says "Not in our name."
The day that my grandmother's entire family and village was massacred in a different genocide, the Holocaust, my grandmother just happened to be absent. I grew up knowing this fact and understanding that it means that, first of all, I'm not supposed to be here. My life is a fluke. And I also grew up agonizing over the question of, where were the neighbors? Why did they just stand by?
Yeah.
Why didn't they hurl their bodies between the killers and my family? And so today, it's with all of my Jewish ancestors at my back, the one who survived, my grandmother, and all those who didn't, that I and all of them together say loudly, more profoundly than ever before, we refuse to be neighbors who just stand by. And I think so many of us in these demonstrations, especially as we watch the Israeli government cynically use the conflation of Judaism and Zionism. Let's be clear, Judaism is our rich thousands-year-old tradition. Israel is a 76-year-old apartheid state. The cover has been pulled off Israel. People can see it for what it is.
Yeah.
And for the Zionist project and the project of ethnic cleansing and genocide and the full expansionist goals that it has, and it will use.
Get yourself a woman who's educated and has a fucking conscience. Ridiculous. No, phenomenal human being.
Any means it can to make that project a reality. And the only excuse they have left, the only cover they have left is to call any resistance to it anti-Semitism. We refuse this. There is nothing anti-Semitic about fighting for people's right to live on their land, to thrive, to be safe at home. We refuse to let our traditions, our identities, our histories be used to allow for the torture, the mass starvation, the massacre and the erasure of Palestinians.
The protest on Monday was the latest in a long string of nonviolent protests led by Jewish Voice for Peace at Grand Central Terminal during rush hour, at the Statue of Liberty, at the Manhattan Bridge. Do you feel the Biden administration is hearing your voice?
Oh, may it be so. Listen, the Biden administration is watching all of us. They have watched the needle move. I mean, 2/3, the polls are showing that 2/3 of Americans now want an arms embargo. 2/3 of Americans are saying that they don't want arms to go to Israel. This is astonishing, and let's understand it for what it is, which is an extraordinary win by the Palestinian-led movement for Palestinian liberation. And of course, we see the Biden administration not listening. We see Congress not listening. All of us are asking, why is this? Well, first of all, it's because we don't live in a democracy. They don't have to listen to us. It is for their own imperial and financial interest. It is for their own interest in controlling the region, which have been broken open and uncovered in so many of the interviews you've done here on Democracy Now! And it's for their financial interests and financial gain, because we know of the corporate control of this country. And so we see this moment of, I mean, to be quite honest, we see a lot of despair and a lot of hopelessness right now, especially as Israel expands its war of extermination deeper into Gaza and then throughout Lebanon, and, you know, bombing Lebanon and Syria and Yemen and the West Bank, and the threat to soon be bombing Iran at the same time. To watch them not just listen, but to expand it at the same time is truly extraordinary. And to feel so many millions more terrorized as they're watching their loved ones in these other countries now fleeing for their lives as well. And we refuse to give up, right? We take inspiration from all of the movements that came before us that never gave up after 1 year of not winning. We take inspiration especially from the Palestinian struggle that has been here fighting for 76 years and has never thrown in the towel because it is such an uphill battle. And all of us here in the belly of the beast, where we know is in control of these arms and these funding, we must do the exact same. We cannot give up. We must double down right now. And even if the path to that arms embargo is getting increasingly muddled as we see them refuse to listen to us, we know that what all of us must be doing is applying this pressure from every angle possible, and that every single one of us has a role to play.
Now, will the American government respond to public pressure? Probably not, especially because this is foreign policy. But every day that goes by, when Israel's up to its ridiculous and bloody warfare and genocide and maintenance of the apartheid, every day that passes, there are less people that are inclined to defend it. I mean, the modern Democratic Party is cheeks in general, and we'll talk about that quite a bit today. Andrew Garfield talked about Gaza.
Oh man, I don't know. I'm pretty, you know what, like out of everyone in the world, I'm so happy. Like we should be putting our energy towards something that actually matters.
What could be more important than that right now?
Yeah, maybe the lives of, I don't know, Palestinians in Gaza right now. Maybe that's where we put our hearts and our energy.
Bro, you got listen. Think about the cheers, man. I've been pro-Palestinian emancipation for a decade. There are very few crowds, unless you are literally in Dearborn, Michigan 10 years ago, when you say this and you get this many cheers. A decade ago, you say this, people will be like, what is that Pakistan? Did you just say Pakistan wrong? Like, what do you mean Palestine? Palestinian? What the is that? This is also at 92NY, which is especially shocking. It's not shocking.
It's not shocking at all.
When you recognize how many people actually have this position, you know? That's it. That's it, dude. It's Jover. It's Jover. But don't listen to mainstream media on this issue. There are a million polls that demonstrate the reality on the ground, People recognize it. They see right from wrong. They know what the fuck is going on. But every single mother in front of a goddamn camera on television, every single goddamn editor is presenting a completely false narrative. They are trying to continue the decades-long propaganda initiative to condition you into believing a false narrative. It is not true. And that's why, in spite of the mainstream narratives on this matter, there's still plenty of polling that is readily available to show you that, like, nah, it's not that complex. It's just kind of fucked up, actually. It doesn't seem very complex to me at all. Kamala realizing too late to break from Biden. Harris weighs more breaks with Biden as he keeps injecting himself into the campaign. Oh, man. Beyond the important A-list actor publicly declaring solidarity with Gaza, it's significant that Garfield says this at 92NY, a prominent New York City cultural institution that has raised money for the IDF, hosted Kissinger, and fired pro-Palestinian employees.
But I want to help you.
You guys know, fun fact, I once balled with Andrew Garfield. It's not a big deal. You know, I'm going to have a LeBron moment and be like, yeah, I could have told, I knew he had it in him. You know, when I balled with him, I was like, one day, Andrew, you're going to do the right thing. Yeah, I balled with him in the WeHo courts one time many, many years ago. I think Will was there too. So you can ask him if you don't believe me. For the record, I had no, I'm joking when I say I'm pulling a LeBron thing. I had no, I'm not saying that I'm taking credit for this. I'm just joking.
You, buddy. What do you want?
What
can this 500 people collectively clap our hands and make happen for you?
Oh man, I don't know. I'm pretty, you know what, like out of everyone in the world, I'm so happy. Like we should be putting our energy towards something that actually matters.
What could be more important than that right now?
Yeah, maybe the lives of, I don't know, Palestinians in Gaza right now. Maybe that's where we put our hearts and our energy, and anyone suffering, anyone oppressed, anyone that is suffering under the weight of the horrors of our world right now, anyone who doesn't have a choice in living lives of dignity. That's where our energy should be going right now.
Is there
my goat? That's beautiful. Dude, it's over. It's over. It's done. No. Sorry. It's done. Donald Trump is going to win the election now.
Yes,
I was not convinced until this very moment. I know I kept saying, like, no, I think Kamala still most likely is going to win. Jim Cramer has never gotten something correct. Inverse Cramer is undefeated, especially when he tries to like talk about political shit. It's done. It's so done. He is so consistently wrong. It's over. He said, I don't see how Trump wins. By the way, I had a breakthrough with my Zionist mom. I was talking to her about 10-7 and recounted past year. She realized that the rising anti-Semitism and the fact that Netanyahu saying they were doing it for the Jews made her say that Israel is a right-wing project does not make Jews safe. Still thinks Israel should exist, which her mind will not change on, but is super upset about bad reactions to the atrocities that Israel's committing. I think that's a pivotal change of attitude with your mom. That's wild, especially because like the dam is breaking, you know, the dam must be breaking a little bit when you start recognizing that maybe it's not just like pure vitriolic hatred towards Jewish existence that causes people to automatically go, yeah, what Israel's doing is wrong.
Yeah.
Because like if you put up that defensive posture across the board, if you put up that defensive posture from the start, as many people did, liberal Zionists to ultra Zionists alike, you played a big role in justifying the atrocities that way. Once you start recognizing that maybe Israel's actions being tied to Judaism is not good for American Jews, you start, like, the dam starts breaking, you know? It becomes much easier to poke holes in this cognitive dissonance. The moment that Israel set its sights on Lebanon, I had some friends with Lebanese parents who were very reactionary, you know? Dare I say, phalangist adjacent. And they were like, immediately like, you don't understand. Israel's fighting Hezbollah. This is a good thing. Yada, yada, yada. I was like, nope, give it time. This is the exact same line of reasoning that Israel used with Hamas. We are liberating the Palestinian population from the treacherous nature of Hamas. liberating them with bombs. Okay, I said give it time. Just
Yeah,
wait.
we're bombing
Check
our
in
way to peace.
with your
That
dad
always works,
in a
right?
couple weeks. He did. He got back to me. His dad is now talking about rising up in arms against the state of Israel. That's it. And no, it's not Austin. No. Austin's grandfather was always pro-Palestine. You can't consistently kill people to quote-unquote liberate them unless you're liberating them from the mother, you know, unless you're liberating them from their bodies, I guess. Israel will always give enough reason for many people that are in the crosshairs of their family members to despise it. You don't have to like Hezbollah at all. Many people don't, but it doesn't matter. All of a sudden, they become the primary source of emancipation. They become the primary unit of emancipation. Just like give Israel enough time and don't stop them from doing anything, doing whatever they want to, and people will resent them. People will despise them. It is understandable. It is an understandable position. Nobody wants to have their family homes blown up. That's it. It's super simple. You cannot maintain an allegiance to a violent country that is blowing you up. I think the switch flipped for my mom with Lebanon, actually, because she saw that Lebanon didn't deserve what was going on, and seeing the positive reaction to the pager attack from some of her Facebook friends made her question what was going on. That's crazy. You can't have entire generations be educated on the dangerous nature of fascism through Holocaust scholars and genocide historians, and then be educated on the bad nature, negative nature of chattel slavery and Nazi Germany, only to have people then literally do it in front of your fucking eyes. Not the chattel slavery part, but certainly the Nazi Germany part. You just can't. It doesn't make sense. If people are going to be like, well, I've learned that this kind of stuff is bad, I think. You know what I mean? Yeah, you can't look at the horrors of Jim Crow, recognize that that's wrong and bad, talk about how we actually overcame this as a country, you know, white people and black people alike. You know, there's a little bit of whitewashing there, but it doesn't matter. People still get the basics, right? Like, the basics are pretty simple. Jim Crow, bad. Okay? Segregation, bad. Apartheid, bad. Genocide, bad. Nazism, bad. When you learn that, even if you're a racist piece of shit, ultimately you still know, like, it's not great. Yeah, see, I literally learned about how great Mandela was and how bad apartheid was in 5th grade. You can't get that out of me. That's what I mean. So that's why these words mean something, you know? These words mean something. When you learn that in school and then someone's like, wait, I'm making a convincing case that Israel is doing exactly that, you're gonna turn around and be like, God damn, that seems kind of up. Feel me? A former Trump middle advisor resigned from a Republican congressional campaign after saying Irish peacekeepers in Lebanon should be napalmed. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. U.S. political advisor resigns after calling for Israel to drop napalm over Irish peacekeepers. You're a villain,
well
dude. The moment that those words come out of your mouth, the moment that you type that and hit enter, you're a villain. You're not a good guy. Like, again, yes, we are all stupid, myself included. But like in all of that endless stupidity, there's still people that recognize right from wrong. Okay? You can't massage this. You can't make this normal. You can't make this good. It requires a tremendous amount of effort, a tremendous amount of lift for people to legitimately start thinking that this is good. This is a acceptable, permissible opinion. Okay? This goes outside of the boundary of permissible racism. This goes outside of the boundary of permissible and acceptable bigotry. Remember, that threshold changes and quite dramatically so. That threshold keeps increasing as time goes on and as mainstream media keeps manufacturing consent and our politicians say, nah, this is good actually. Israel has a right to defend itself, yada, yada, yada. But people still have the capacity to see what the is going on. And every single day that goes by where you have people like this that forget that they are not saying this in Hebrew in Tel Aviv to a predominantly Israeli audience and just speak out of turn like this, the more people go, yeah, this is gross, man. Israel should carpet bomb the Irish area and then drop napalm over it. Anyway, there was a study about the correlation of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism being pro-Palestinian with the political orientation and split up with it with or without college degree in Germany. Who would have thought there was no correlation of being anti-Zionist / pro-Palestinian and anti-Semitism? Tweet in German, auto-translate as picture. Young academic anti-Semitic? A new study from the University of Mannheim contradicts this narrative. It shows that traditional anti-Semitism is at least prevalent among young left-leaning academics. A pro-Palestinian attitude is particularly pronounced. Eine neue Studie is least prevalent among young left-leaning academics. Not at least, sorry. I read it wrong. Let me tell you, I'm so shocked to find out that the least anti-Semitic Germans happen to be the pro-Palestinian ones. That's shocking.
Such a shock, right?
Pro-Palestinian academics. Very, very shocking new revelatory information. What will we do with this?
All right. That's about it from me. Thank you, Hassan. I will link all the videos in the description below. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you next Sunday if on Twitch. All right. Take care. See ya.